Welcome to the Mega Blast Podcast. I'm your host, Jason McDonald. My goal is to get to the truth through conversation. The Mega Blast Podcast is produced by Arts and Opinion, an online journal housed at the Archives of Canada. Visit us at artsandopinion.com. I hope you enjoy today's guest. Welcome, Sonny Greenwich Sr. Thanks for coming on my podcast.
Thank you, Jason, for having me, obviously.
Okay.
It's been so long. When was the last time we saw each other? It was years ago.
Got to be 20
10
years. I came to Ireland.
Was it 20?
20, yeah.
Wow.
Because I before I went to Korea, I went and visited you in Ireland. I was living in Europe at the time.
That's right.
That was in about 2002.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
It's literally 20 years. And well, you've been over here a couple times, but we missed each other. You've been
I've been back. I was in Montreal twice in the last 25 years.
yeah. Your hometown.
And that was enough.
Yeah. You're one of these expat Montrealers who's like, screw that place, right?
Yeah. Well, not really. No, I love Montreal, of course.
Of course, yeah. Well, that leads me to something I wanted to say before we really get started. Is I've known you for so long, since I was a teenager, really, that it's almost
probably.
Yeah, since I was a kid. I mean, and you're about 10 years older than me, so there was a dynamic sometimes of sort of fraternal teasing a little bit sometimes, right? Which I'm not upset about or anything. But
were you going to say bullying?
Unfortunately, I feel bad that I almost did say bullied, which is kind of unfair. But I just wanted to get that on the record because some listeners might hear some of that throughout the conversation, maybe, which is kind of funny.
The thing is,
go ahead.
It's not like we've known each other so long that it's kind of a, what?
Exactly. It's all fun. Yeah. Well, yeah. But I just wanted to just put that out there also because you are the person who I've known the longest that I've had on so far. So it actually caused me a little bit of difficulty in the preparation because usually I don't know that much about the person.
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, what can I ask you that I don't know is kind of like harder to.
Yeah, it is weird, isn't it?
So,
yeah, I mean the way I look at it is, it's not like we were sitting around the kitchen table every day.
No,
just
that's
once
true.
in a while. So
that's definitely true. Yeah, no, it's true because I'm just in case anybody cares. I was best friends with your brother, so it's my best friend. So you were my best friend's older brother, so we became friends as well. But you're right. Okay. I just want to say for the record too, before we get rolling, the Mega Blast podcast is again international. You're in Ireland.
Nice.
I'm in Montreal. Last podcast a few days ago was with a man called Milton Fernandez in the Dominican Republic, all about Haitian people in the Dominican Republic and things like, the issues there. So if anybody's listening and they're interested in, the island of Hispaniola, you can go listen to that. It's kind of an interesting podcast, but it's the second international podcast.
Right. Well, I mean, I'll probably go listen to that because I've heard things that are not really very good there.
Yeah.
I mean, Haiti, obviously, but I mean, I know that people are trying to get across, obviously, all the time.
Many.
So I would like to hear what's going on there.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting case because Haiti, both countries are poor, but Haiti is like extremely poor. I mean, it's like really, it's one of the world's poorest countries. So, it's about 10 times difference, which might sound strange because they're both poor, but it makes enough of a difference that a lot of Haitians go live and work in the Dominican Republic, and many of them stay there. And they've been doing this for, centuries at this point.
Yeah, of course.
So, I mean, Fanny's part Haitian. My wife, she's Dominican. So, that might be interesting for you. So Sonny Greenwich Jr., I'm just going to do a little bit of a bio of what I would think, and then I'd like you to add to it. So multiple gold record-selling guitarist with the band Bootsauce from the 1990s, Juno award-winning, and you're now a successful vlogger based in Ireland. I want to focus mainly on your life and work as a musician up to the end of the Bootsauce era kind of thing. But Is there
Sure.
anything like to add about your bio to listeners that maybe I missed?
Well, I mean, let's see. I wonder what else I've got. Well, I mean, I've won a Producer of the Year award in Canada as well, and
Really?
Songwriter of the Year. Yeah, the A disc. You know the
Yeah. Oh,
what,
yeah.
what
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, one of those, and I won
But producing
SOCAN
what?
Songwriter.
What
I
gave
think
you
it was
that?
Sleeping Booty. I
Sleeping
think it was
Booty.
Sleeping Booty.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was a long time ago, so
Yeah.
I,
And a Writer of the Year
and
award as well?
yeah, a few of those actually, and I think those were SOCAN awards. My ex-manager has all of those things, and Alan Baculus, the bass player from Bootsauce, stole the award from my house,
Oh my God.
and
There's a story.
it's sitting at his house now.
So I guess you're referring to Steve Shipp?
Yeah,
Steve
yeah,
Shipp,
yeah.
right. Yeah, you're a
So
former
he
manager.
has all
Yeah.
those awards. So I'm not even sure what they were, but I know we won numerous songwriter awards as well back in the day.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love the way you're so like most people would kind of have their award up on the mantle, like your mom has one, I think. I think your mom has your Juno, and you're kind of like, whatever. I did that 20 years ago. Like you don't seem egotistical about it. Is that?
No, well, I mean the thing is, I mean, I can't even. How long was that? 30 years ago.
Yeah, it's a long
You
time.
know, it's a long time.
Yeah.
It is a long time. And I'm. It's not that I'm not proud of the awards. I'm man. You know, I love the fact that we won some stuff back
Yeah.
then. Otherwise, no one would even remember us. I'd say, at this point,
Yeah, so
it's
it's
funny
more
that.
of it just that it's far back in time, so you're kind of doing different things and you're not thinking about that or right? Is that
Yeah, and also
why?
I don't really have enough room to put them up anymore.
That's how many you got, right? Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
got
yeah.
so many, I don't even
Uh,
have the space, right? Yeah,
well,
well
I
you
mean,
go ahead.
like I have one of my gold albums is actually in a pub here in Kinsale up on the wall because they had a bunch of
Nice.
pictures of albums and stuff like that. So I say, hey, look, you might as well put this up on the wall. Just it
That's
seemed like
so
the right thing to do
cool.
when I get.
That's
Yeah,
that's like Montreal, Montreal boy goes international, and there's a piece
yeah,
of us in Ireland or something like
yeah.
that, right? Yeah, no, I think part of it is too. This is almost a personal observation. You've always seemed very forward looking as a person. You've always seemed very like thinking about what you're gonna do, and it's aspirational might be one way to think about it, rather than sort of what you've done and nostalgic, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm not really sure about that, but I mean, certainly since I stopped drinking and doing drugs and all that stuff, the I've been looking more forward. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess there's kind of
I mean,
three. Go ahead.
it's at least now I can remember what I did yesterday.
Well, I suppose there's three ways you could orient yourself generally: be nostalgic, looking backward, be
Mm.
aspirational, looking forward, or just be sort of hedonistic and living in the now. So maybe hedonistic's the wrong word, but and so you've lived your life mostly in the present and future rather than thinking about nostalgia for the past. Mostly, I think, if that makes any sense.
Well,
That's how I see
yeah.
it.
Well, I mean, I always. I mean, I suppose my just kind of the way I am is I'm always looking forward, but I like hedonistic as well. I
Yeah,
mean, who
yeah.
doesn't?
Yeah, most of us do, except that it gets a little tired after a while. When
Yeah.
you're doing the hedonism thing, it just gets, I don't know. That was my experience with it anyway. It gets, you start to, I found myself, I get sort of self-loathing too. I don't know if you go through that.
Yeah, see, I never got that. I never had that issue, but I did have the issue of, being drunk for years at a time,
Yes.
and
Right. So, yeah,
that's,
that's a problem, right?
yeah, yeah, it definitely was a problem.
Okay.
And it's funny when you're in it, it doesn't seem like much of a problem.
Well,
But
you're drunk,
I mean, I realized,
right?
yeah, well, I realized I lost a lot of time,
Right.
and I wasted a lot of, well, I wasted a lot of my life basically, just going out and getting wasted and partying, instead of actually working on what it is that I really like doing, which is the music.
Interesting. Yeah. So you view it as a net negative in the sense that the time spent might be could have been more interestingly applied.
Well, yeah, I also don't want to be one of those guys that's like, you better stop
Yeah,
drinking,
yeah, yeah.
like it's
Yeah,
not like
yeah.
that. I don't,
Yeah.
I don't really mean that at all. What I do mean is that I realize that, I, basically wasted a lot of time partying.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's it really, and it was fun,
Well,
and
that's yeah. Well, I
I
think
don't
that's a
regret any of
really
it.
that's a really good point. I mean, with my students, sometimes when that comes up, I think they kind of expect me to be like sort of wagging my finger, and I'm like, well, no, drugs can be fun,
Yeah,
and
of course
booze
it
can
is.
be fun. Like it can be really a great experience to be going out and doing stuff, getting drunk and having fun and all that. So the question is how you manage it and integrate it into your life, and how much of it you're going to do and all that, because if it's just like experience that or don't experience that, I would say go ahead and do it. Try it, for either see
Yeah,
if you're
well,
better off,
I mean, yeah, but also, you got to be careful too. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
it's not like we don't know a lot of people that didn't make it through all of this stuff.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. We all have friends
Yeah,
and
yeah,
former friends who kind of stumbled too far down that pathway,
yeah, yeah, for sure.
right,
I mean,
and ended up not so well off. Okay, I want to go through. I really want to spend time talking about Bootsauce because that's really where our
mhm.
lives intersected more. But I wanted to start off with your childhood and musical influences. I wanted you to talk about what you listened to and things like that. I don't know, when you were a
Right.
kid or a
Well,
young
I mean,
teenager.
yeah, the Beatles would have been the first real thing I would imagine. The first album that I bought myself was the White Album, and
Oh, nice.
I bought it from Eaton's. Those, you remember Eaton's? I don't even know if it's still there, but
Yeah, yeah.
they
Eaton
had a
Center.
delivery service, and I bought the album with my own whatever the money that my mom or dad gave me to spend on stuff, and had them deliver it to Longueuil, where I
Nice.
live on the South Shore, South Shore boy. So that was the first album that I ever bought myself. And let's see, what else did I do? I saw funny things. Like I went with my uncle Walter to see Tony Orlando and Dawn.
Wow. Okay.
I know, yeah, yeah, tie a yellow ribbon around the old oak tree. But I suppose I was only kind of 8 or something, so it was or 8 or 9, so it was kind of amazing. Saw them in Toronto, actually, of all places.
Really? Yeah. Okay.
And I also saw, I mean, back then, I saw the Jackson Five in Montreal with the Commodores as the opening band.
Nice.
So I mean, the music was always there, and of course, obviously because of my dad and the jazz stuff, I saw a lot of jazz. I mean, just growing up and sleeping on bandstands and whatever else, as a kid.
I think we share that. When I was growing up, my father was involved in a lot of jazz and sort of, unusual, weird musical stuff in Toronto,
Yeah,
and also classical music. So I think you and I probably both have had experiences. I remember going to see Guys and Dolls every single weekend for like a year. My dad was playing it, right? So I'd go and sit, he could
yeah,
take care of me, right? My parents were split up, so I'd go and sit in the pit. And I still to this
yeah,
day
yeah,
know all the lyrics, just because
yeah. It's incredible.
you watch a play 20 times or whatever, you got nothing else to do. You start memorizing things.
Well, you
Yeah.
should go audition for it now.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I'm sure they'd want me.
Yeah.
I could play the fat guy,
Yeah.
the big fat gambler guy. Yeah, that's
It's
interesting. So it's sort of a mixture of some pop music. I'm aware of the Michael Jackson concert. It was at Autostad, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. The
now torn
autostat. Yeah.
down.
Is
Do
it
you?
gone?
Yeah, it's gone. It's been gone for. There's a Costco around there now that I go to sometimes. So yeah, a lot of changes, bro.
Madness.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Madness. Yeah.
So I'm just curious, like that concert. Do you remember anything about it? Just because that must have been so amazing. Is that you were
Well,
a kid?
I don't. I remember it sort of like you know what I mean. Like I don't remember any particular thing other than like seeing them up on stage, kind of thing. You know what I mean? I don't remember the any of the Commodores particularly, but I remember being there, if you know what I
Right.
mean. And I remember the Autostat, of course, because I've been to see other shows after that, like, April Wine and a bunch of other stuff afterwards. But that was the first time I was ever there.
Okay.
Yeah, which
So
was kind of
that
interesting.
kind of leads us into, as you get into your teenage years, you're listening to a lot of hard rock, right? I remember you mentioned seeing Nazareth, and you just mentioned April Wine. So it's a lot of like heavy
Yeah.
metal, hard rock kind of stuff that you were into.
Yeah, I kind of went, I basically went to see just about everything there was at the Forum in
The
Montreal.
Rolling Stones.
Well, no, never saw the Stones in those days. I
Okay.
saw them in 1980. Where's it? The Rich Stadium in
Buffalo.
Buffalo. Yeah, yeah.
Wow,
That's
that's a
yeah,
huge stadium. That's like a
yeah, yeah. It
stadium of
was
100,000 people, right?
yeah, it was a big old show, and they were the
Well, that
Rolling
must have been a
Stones.
great show. But
Well, it
yes,
was.
yeah, go ahead.
But I remember, like, what was it? Like, it was something really weird. Like Nash the Slash was the opening act, and there was, like, like three other bands. Maybe I can't remember. And plus we saw things like Heart and the Who,
Nice. Yeah.
together. And I think that was at Rich Stadium too, as I remember. We used to do stuff like that, travel down, to go see big shows or whatever. Anything that didn't come to Montreal, basically.
Right. Right.
And also at the Forum, there was one guy on one door that would let you just, like, hand him a $5, and he'd let you through. He pretend to rip the $5 and put it in his pocket and let you in. So we literally saw every show. Yeah,
Yes. I think that there was once, speaking of that kind of corruption at the Forum, that there was the riot at the Rolling Stones concert in 1972 had something to do with that. There were fake
really.
tickets being sold, and too many people showed up, and so it was overcrowded. And then there was this huge riot outside the Forum. I think it was 1972. It's kind of a famous. There's a movie made about it and everything. Maybe
Oh, right.
you were a
Okay.
little
Well,
kid at the time, but
I was 10
yeah,
in
so it's not
72, so
something.
I don't think I was seeing the Rolling Stones at 10, but I saw a lot of shows at the Forum. I mean, I saw everybody. I mean, I saw Bob Marley. You name it. I've seen everybody, really, back from those days. And of course, it was the thing. Everyone was there. It was at the Forum was the place to play. The one place that we never did play, Bootsauce, that is.
Did you want
But,
to?
like,
Was that
oh, of
something you aspired?
course.
Obviously, yeah.
Oh yeah,
Forum.
obviously, yeah. It was that was
Yeah.
that was the thing, man. I remember seeing Ivan get up there and with Men Without Hats and do his thing, and I was like, man, this is fabulous. Considering that we'd only been, like, hammered drunk like a night or two before that, crazy stuff. But yeah,
Ivan, yeah, Men Without Hats seemed to be the group from your era. I interviewed Chris Berry. We were talking about him off
mm,
camera, and Bootsauce. There's a bunch of bands from Montreal, but Men Without Hats seemed to be the one that really blew up the biggest from that era.
well, I
Would you say
mean,
so?
oh well, absolutely the biggest. I mean,
Except for April Wine, maybe? I don't know.
well, I don't see April Wine on The Simpsons.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, yeah.
They're more of a
I know.
Canadian
I
phenomenon, right? Yeah,
yeah, but
April Wine.
but April Wine were huge too. I mean, and they were really good guys as well. I fleetingly met every single one of them, and they were always nice. They were a little bit older than I would have been, and probably older than Ivan as well. I think Ivan just turned 65 a couple of days ago.
Oh yeah. Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't know he was 65. I saw it was
yeah.
his birthday.
As
Yeah.
like I said to him, he says, "You get your bus pass now."
Yeah, you can take the metro for free or whatever
Yeah,
it is,
yeah, yeah.
$1.25. Yeah. Just you mentioned Nash the Slash. I've been a fan of Nash the Slash for a lot of
Oh,
my
I
life.
loved Nash the
Such
Slash.
an incredible artist. If anybody listening to
Yep.
this have never heard of Nash the Slash, you have to go on YouTube and look up some videos of this guy.
Yeah,
He
I'm
dressed
not
in
even
the
sure.
American flag. His face was completely covered, and people didn't know who he was for a long
Yeah.
time. He was
Well,
unknown.
for most, I saw him. I don't know. I mean, probably 10 times,
Okay.
and I never knew who he was. I saw him in weird places like Winnipeg, and and he would just
Well,
play
he was
all
a
by himself,
Canadian.
right?
He was a Canadian artist who wasn't known that much outside Canada,
Oh
as far
no,
as I'm
no, no, of
aware.
course not. I mean, but the
Right?
thing is, also it happened right at the time where I don't even know if there is any video of him around. I mean, there might
On
be, but
YouTube
it
there
was
is. There's not much,
oh
but there's some. Just because
yeah,
I'm a fan, so I looked him up on
yeah,
YouTube. But
yeah.
you're right.
So he sort of
He's not that well known. Yeah.
yeah, but I loved him, man. He was the greatest, and plus the fact that he played all on his own, and he played
One man
mandolin.
band.
Yeah, yeah,
Literally a one
fabulous.
man band.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you know, and it's funny. It always stuck with me that he played the mandolin as well. You know, because I played mandolin all the time I've been in Ireland. I've been playing mandolin, not guitar. And he had that electric mandolin. He'd like smash into some crazy
Great.
stuff. You know,
He also,
fabulous.
yeah, he was
And
sort of
covered in blood.
yeah, covered in blood. He was sort of a prodigy musically. I mean, he would go on stage all covered up in his bandages. I saw him once, and he would
Yeah,
set up his kind of, drum machines to go, and then he would get up and play either the electric violin or the
yeah,
electric
yeah,
mandolin. I think he also
yeah.
played guitar sometimes. I don't know,
Yeah, I don't
but
remember the guitar, but I just the mandolin was the thing that always stuck with me. That I said, this guy is crazy,
I always loved the
but I loved it.
electric violin just because I always find the violin as such a great instrument in, I mean, it's in a lot of bluegrass and music like that,
Yeah,
fiddle
but
playing,
these electric violin always reminds me of like Jean-Luc Ponty or something, and I mean I like Jean-Luc Ponty, but it wasn't. He was on the sort of on the lighter side of the jazz thing, you know,
right.
or at least that's the way I saw it back then. I mean,
I think that's a
he's kind of
reasonable assessment of
yeah,
him. Kenny
and
G is kind of in that vein. I mean, maybe that's insulting to
well,
people
yeah,
who don't see. I don't know.
yeah. I think it possibly would be,
Yeah.
but like I mean, I remember we were rehearsing at SIR in New York. And Kenny G was in the next room
Really?
rehearsing as well. So I had to go in and just say hi because it was too funny. You know, I was like, Kenny G, wow. I know I've made it now.
Yeah, well, you're in the next room. The other
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
I would say to myself if I were in your position is like, he really exists? Like, there's actually a
yeah,
person
yeah,
called Kenny G? Like, it's sort of like this
yeah, yeah.
you hear, and you don't really imagine there's a person behind it somehow.
Yeah, no, it's a
Yeah.
funny thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other thing, and this I've noticed, having met a lot of famous people over the years, that you know it's them when you see them. You go, oh, you know, you don't mistake, you know, a look-alike for them because there's, you know, how the human eye sort of sees so deeply into someone's face, you know if it's them or not. And it's like, holy crap,
Yeah.
that's Kenny G.
Yeah, that sort of raises just some immediate questions. I wonder how good our eyes are because I haven't seen nearly as many famous people as you, but I've noticed whenever it's happened, like when I've seen people that I've seen on TV, there's something much more sort of full about their face that I can't quite place. When I see them in front of me, I can't quite explain it, but it's like it's almost I don't know. There's something quite different about seeing a person,
Well,
you know.
yeah, yeah, but it's kind of like almost a shock,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's like, huh?
That's really
Bruce,
them.
Bruce Springsteen? Fuck me.
You met Bruce Springsteen?
No. But
Okay,
that
yeah.
was Steve. That was Steve Ship's story. He was in the toilet somewhere, and Springsteen was having a piss beside him, and he said, "I couldn't help myself. I had to look at his dick." Oh
Oh man.
no!
Oh God. And of course,
I
yeah.
know
Did I ask the next
I
question? Yeah. Like, what's the next
no,
obvious
I
question? I
didn't
don't know if
ask
I
him.
want to know, right?
No, I didn't ask any further than that. But
Yeah.
it was just. I remember the story was so funny at the time that we just like, all right, okay, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, okay. So this is kind of like Montreal in the 60s and 70s, and we've got all the classic rock stuff going on, right? And you're also influenced a fair bit, by the jazz of your father especially as a young child,
Yeah.
or I'm guessing, right?
Well, yeah, because that's what I was surrounded with. So I saw that all the time. In fact, I knew more about jazz than I knew about anything else before. I guess I was kind of around, 12 or something.
Okay.
Then I started getting a little bit more into the rock and roll stuff, but I think I think I was 15 when I saw the what was it called? A film about Jimi Hendrix is what it
Mm-hmm.
was called. And I saw that in Toronto at one of the old cinemas on Yonge Street, and I saw that. I said, "Holy smoke, man! I could do that. I'd
Yeah.
love to do that." You set the guitar on fire and whatever, play behind your head and all that. Yeah, so that was what really changed my attitude towards guitar, and also wanting to be a rock musician.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, kind of funny. It was that movie, and then a little bit further on, what really changed my idea about music altogether was Anarchy for the UK, the song.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, which was
Punk
kind of, to
rock.
me, it was, well, yeah, but the thing about it was punk rock, but it was also, in its own way, it was kind of like, it was like pop. It
Yeah.
was very, very. Yeah, I mean, it was catchy, like, you know
Hmm.
what I mean. Even though it was meant to be whatever, anti-establishment and all that, it was super catchy. And I heard it and I said, man, that's those guys are onto something. That's great.
Interesting.
And also the fact that the riff, the classic Johnny B. Good riff is did it, did it, did it, did it, right?
Hmm.
But they went did it backwards.
Interesting.
So
Yeah. Wow. I've never
yeah, it
noticed
was just,
that before.
yeah, it's actually it's like if you're playing in G, you would um you would hit the low E string instead of going up to the high E on the Johnny B. Good riff. So
Right.
it's exactly the same riff except kind of backwards, if you know what I mean.
Wow.
Yeah, which is
That's
cool.
that's such a cool observation. That
Yeah.
reminds me of in Keith Richards' book. He talks about how Satisfaction and Jumpin' Jack Flash are the same thing, but kind of mirrored. Like it's like
Oh
kind of like the
yeah.
notes are. And if you listen to,
Yeah.
I know. I can see I can
Yeah.
see you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
it is. They're just kind of backwards. The notes go the other direction or something, and
Well, it's
you know,
it's. I mean, that book is fantastic,
oh,
by the
it's
way. I
great.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah, I love it. And I don't know if you've heard the audio book, because he does the
Oh,
last
really?
half of it,
No, I read it. Yeah, that's.
and Johnny Depp does the first half.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah.
That's great.
But it was great. So, but I mean, going through it, it was like I had to stop, every couple of pages
Yeah,
and
me
listen to
too.
the songs. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
amazing,
yeah. No, I
fabulous,
know. Yeah, you're going through
fabulous.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, I
it's
really love that.
interesting how I mean it's like great pop music is really really hard to do. I think like to get a pop song that's a hit is much harder I think than people would imagine somehow. Like you have
Well,
to
I
be
mean,
simple, but
obviously, otherwise
go ahead.
everyone would be doing it if it was
Right?
easy.
Yeah, yeah. Every
You know?
single song written would be a hit, right? So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and also, I mean, people's the way people hear music, is somehow you know, um, it kind of belongs to themselves. You know what I mean?
right,
Otherwise, everyone would love the same music.
right,
You hear
right.
things different than than I do, and all that kind of stuff. And how also I remember as being a kid, like you either liked the Stones or you liked the Beatles.
Yeah.
You weren't allowed to like both of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Do
So
you
you'd have
fall
to,
down? So you mentioned the Beatles earlier. When I was a kid, my parents were total Beatles all the way.
yeah.
My mom liked the Rolling Stones as well, though. My father my father as a senior citizen now likes the Rolling Stones, which is interesting because I became a diehard dyed in the wool Stones guy when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
Never look back. I don't know if you're like that or not.
No, Beatles for me.
Really? Yeah.
Although, yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I love Keith Richards, obviously,
Yeah.
but yeah, always a Beatles fan, because the Beatles really changed everything in terms of, music and all that.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
they're
mean,
definitely
they
the
really changed.
originals.
I mean, they
Right.
changed the Stones. Forget about
Yes,
music.
true. The Stones, yeah, the Stones deliberately, sort of marketed themselves as the anti-Beatles very, very
Yeah.
early on. That was their whole
Oh, it
brand,
was
right?
it was it was the best thing they could possibly do. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, oh, we hate those fuckers.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, they'd all
They're
be out
drinking
every
and
night
doing coke
together. Yeah,
together.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
In
yeah,
London or whatever, they're all hanging out.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, you can see it right in there's that movie, the circus thing. You can see them all there
Rock
together.
and Roll Circus.
Rock and
Yeah.
Roll Circus.
Yeah. The Stones movie. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah,
Just on a
great
quick note
film.
about that, do you know the backstory on that? This is, it's like they didn't release that for a long time, and there's different theories. One theory is that the Who came on and were like 10 times better, and the Stones went on really late in the morning and they were drunk and stoned, so Mick Jagger didn't want to release it because they didn't sound good. I don't know.
Well,
Uh,
I mean, that was kind of the story I heard, is that they just didn't like it.
yeah,
You know,
I think it was
they
good.
thought it was crap or whatever else. So,
Yeah.
but I mean, but also the other thing about that is that you'd see it every once in a while on the late night circuit, because oh man, we've got the Rolling Stones circus here, man. You know, because it's banned. You can't see
Yeah.
this, or
Right,
what was it?
right. It's
Yeah,
almost a marketing ploy in some. It
yeah,
almost like,
absolutely. Well, I mean,
yeah.
and they certainly did that with that other one. What was it? Cocksucker Blues. I don't know if you know about that movie,
Of course.
but
Well,
that
not the
movie.
movie. I know about the song, but
Well,
they didn't
no, the
release the
movie.
movie.
The movie was they had picture film of them, with how would you put it, groupies on the airplane and that kind of stuff, all kinds of
Okay.
crazy stuff, bad stuff. So the film was completely banned. They wouldn't release it or anywhere else. But of course we'd go see it every 2 years. It would play somewhere in one, Cinema 5 or something.
Right. You
you
go
know
and check it out because it's all the
yeah.
cachet of being a band thing.
Well, yeah, that's it. It's a band movie. You have to go see the band movies.
Hmm.
Like
Okay.
Freaks even.
Good. Yeah. So I wanted to. So then when did you start playing guitar exactly? What was that your first instrument? I mean, was it?
Yeah. I guess I guess my dad got me my first guitar for my 16th birthday,
Okay.
and that was kind of starting late, really, for being a guitar player. But I for the first few years, I really played a lot, like 4 or 5 hours a day,
Oh, wow.
trying to I think I mean, every musician does this when they first start. I mean,
Yeah.
they play and play and play and play and play until, so I guess it was around 16, and then I had my first band was Dog Food.
Dog Star.
No, Dog Food.
Dog food. Okay. All right.
Yes, Dog Food was before Dog Star.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah,
Wonder why you changed the name. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
It's got a
yeah.
dog
I
food.
remember it was do you remember Bram?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah,
No, Bram.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it was he came up with the name
Oh,
Dog Food.
really? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Wow.
But
Okay.
that was that was our first real band, and I remember it kind of it morphed into Dogstar after a while, because obviously the name is kind of stupid but fun. But also at the time, it was the vibrators, dog food. Yeah, great, perfect.
Right. Dog Star. So Dog Star became your band as in, I suppose, your late teens. I
Yeah,
just the name Dog Star. I heard through in preparing for this. I was chatting with a friend of mine, Ken Doolittle, who you may remember. He's a yeah, he's
that
a
name
local
rings a
guy.
bell.
He knows you a little bit, and he knew Jack Middleman. He played with
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I remember the name for sure.
yeah.
Um,
He told me that it comes from some sort of a movie, like an alternative movie, like a
no,
oh, no
no. It
Dog
was
Star, no Dog Star Man.
it was serious. The Dog Star. That's where we got it
Ah,
from.
okay, okay,
And also, what's his name? Keanu Reeves was in a band called Dogstar as well.
really
After us, though, I should have
okay,
sued him.
interesting. So
Yeah,
did Dog Star like? Did you get any gigs? I mean, did you play like any high secondary school kind of stuff,
yeah,
like
we
that
did a
kind of
lot. We did
thing?
a lot. We did well as dog food. We did places like what's Westmount High. I
Okay,
remember we
nice.
played Westmount High, and that kind of stuff. And actually, didn't Kamala Harris go to
She
Westmount
did.
High as well?
I
Yeah.
think you're about the same age too. So I mean, I'm wondering if she might
Yeah,
have been
but
listening to you.
like she was friends with some of my friends. I never met her,
Oh,
because I
okay.
went looking in. Yeah, I did meet her, and I didn't know her at all.
Is she
But yeah,
your
yeah, so we
age?
played
I mean,
Westmount.
is she about like
I,
I'm just wondering
I
if she
see.
was around there.
I think she might be a couple of years younger than me.
Right.
Like, I'm not positive about that, but basically around the same age.
Right.
We had friends in common. Let's put it
Right.
that way.
Right.
Um, but and also we did stuff like the what was it, the where Mind was when they moved to the what was it, the I can't remember,
On Elmer?
downtown somewhere.
Elmer.
Was it Aylmer?
That's where it is
They moved.
now. It's in this
Oh
big
well, okay,
building right across
yeah,
from McGill on University of
yes,
Elmer,
that's
one of
it.
those. Yeah.
That's it. They
Right.
so we did a show there for sure, and we do stuff like well, it was Station 10. We did Station 10
Nice.
loads as well. Yeah, actually, we did Station 10 as Bootsauce once,
Really? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
unannounced. We just because we had, I'm pretty sure the first album was already out, and I don't know, we were looking to rehearse or something like that. And said, "Heck, let's ask the guys at Station 10. They'll take us. They'll take anybody."
So was that in the Chris
um,
Berry? I mean, Chris Berry recounted in when he was talking to me about how he basically built that place as a punk club
well,
in the 70s or what? Not
no,
built it, but
this
he
this was
developed it.
after Chris Berry's days, I'd say, but I'm pretty sure Chris Berry probably got us in when we were Dog Star, though.
That's what I was just going
Uh,
to ask. I wonder if that was during his tenure there. Just
oh,
it
I'm
crosses
sure
over.
I'm for sure because
Yeah.
I remember him talk about the drunk Indian guys and everything else, and, and I remember that our drummer fell off the back of the stage because
Really?
it was just a mess in there. It was crazy, but great fun. But and like we were terrible, but we could get up there and play our asses off. It was great. I mean, we
You
weren't
got to
actually. I
practice,
shouldn't say
right?
we were terrible.
Well, terrible is the
The thing
wrong
is, I
word,
shouldn't
but
say we
yeah,
were terrible. We were pretty good for what we were. You know what
right.
I mean? Uh,
Which is a bunch
like
of
Steve was a great.
teenagers who just started learning how to play, right?
That's right.
One
So
way to think
we
about
had
it,
Steve
right?
Radinsky on drums and Carl Roof, who is still playing to this day. He's in what was the Durham Street Poets. You ever heard of those guys?
No,
He's the
no.
bass player in that band now, and of course Jack. So Jack was the singer. He passed away a few years back now, but
Yeah.
yeah, it
Sweden, I
was
believe.
great fun, man. Yeah, in
Yeah,
Sweden, yeah.
yeah, that's because I'm just thinking like, you go see a band, playing in a club like that and they just started playing and they're not that tight. But sometimes if, you have to do that a lot. I mean, you think about the Beatles going to Hamburg and when they showed
For
up in
sure.
Hamburg, they probably sounded a bit like you guys. And at the
Yeah,
end,
yeah,
it was
yeah, for
like they
sure.
were tight as
Yeah,
hell, right?
super.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, look, I saw some great fun shows at Station 10, you know what I mean? And in fact, I don't know if you know why it's called Station 10 because the cop shop around the corner was Station
On
10.
Guy Street or
Yeah,
Maisonneuve or
or just
something, right?
whatever. Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
remember where it was exactly, but I do remember being well, I got pulled in there once when I was a young kid in high school playing hooky in Montreal, in the
Oh,
big
nice.
city. The little kid from the South Shore, scared, and then the cops always caught us doing something stupid or whatever and
Oh
dragged us
man,
in
they
there.
pulled you in there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure my mother had to come get me out of there. Station 10.
that must have been a little bit tough when your mom showed up. I can imagine.
Well, yeah, but I don't remember it being that bad. It was we did something. Maybe it was even for playing hooky. I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't. It wasn't we weren't killing anybody or anything like that,
Right, right.
or doing
Yeah.
beanies or anything.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's interesting to me how a band needs that time to kind of get to play, often in front of an audience too, in order to get good, right?
Yeah, well, yes, to a certain extent. I mean, like Bootsauce, we never rehearsed. I
No?
mean, we rehearsed, eh. I mean, I think in all the years we maybe rehearsed maybe 15 times,
Wow.
something like that.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we never rehearsed, but the thing is because we wrote directly to tape. In those days it was actually tape. Um, so we knew all our parts. So all we just did is went and played them. It
Right,
was kind of fun.
right.
We never really thought of it in that way. And plus, we hated doing anything. Didn't like rehearsals. All we wanted to do was get drunk. Playing was just the avenue to the beer.
Right, right. Well, I remember when when the famous Thunder Home on Henri
Mm.
Julien Street. on the
Yeah.
plateau. I remember being there once, and here you guys were in there. I don't know if you were rehearsing or writing music, but there's sort of a story where a mutual friend of ours was in there and was actually taping you without your knowledge. I don't know if you remember this. I won't name the person. And,
Well,
and this person
I
has
know
a
who you're
little bit
talking
of,
about.
yeah, exactly. So, and this person is maybe a little bit, what's the word for that? Not very good socially, or has some mental
Yeah.
issues or something. And I just remember you, sort of yelling at him for about half an hour and going, look, you can't, it's like you have to ask. It's like, and the person
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
what's the problem? I thought it would be flattering for you and it'd be great in the future. We'd have, and all this. And he was sort of right about the flattering and the posterity and all that. But,
Well, the thing is, I think what it was is because in those days, if you had someone like drop your single before the record company, you'd be in big trouble, or anything like that,
right.
Where it's completely different now. I mean,
You want to
now
get it
I
out
can
there.
record a single. Well, the thing is, I could record something today and have it out tomorrow.
Right. Right.
Like it's as easy as that now. And in fact, I remember what's the song? Instant Karma. Like John Lennon recorded it one night and released it the next day.
Right.
But that was the first time that had ever been done, or something like that, that kind of way. So I think really, we were probably writing stuff because we never rehearsed there because we never had a drum kit in that place or anything like that. So we must have been writing or something. Yeah.
I remember sometimes you guys would get together also at Alan's place where I lived for a while. You guys would come over sometimes, and I'd sort of hear you guys kind of banging away on guitars and obviously talking and stuff and writing music, basically.
Yeah. Well, as I said, we always wrote everything to tape, so we never actually we never wrote anything like, say, in the jam room or anything like that. We would just like, come, here's my idea, and okay, all right, that's cool. Let's see now. Here comes a sample. Like, what this sample? Will that sample fit with this? And we kind of went like that, adding our parts individually and together, But it wasn't like the other bands that would like go to a rehearsal room and play for months and months at a time and try and figure stuff out. We couldn't be bothered with that. We were too
That's
like
interesting.
literally all we wanted to do. It's like Kenny Laguna said to us, I bring you here to my house. I got a Rolls Royce over here. All you guys want to know about is the beer.
Yeah. That's so just to be clear, what you mean by writing to tape, you basically mean you say, okay, bass line would be good like this, E to G, whatever, blah blah blah. All right, and then okay, the guitar riff and then the rhythm guitar, maybe that would go well. So you wouldn't actually put it together until you went into the recording studio to record it, or do it on stage, right? Would be another.
Yeah, that's it. We would literally, as the parts were being written, we'd put them on the tape right there. So
except for
the first time. Say again.
Except for the drum track, because you had no drum. You had no drum.
No, it was drum loops and a drum machine for the first album. So we did everything right there. So we would, in fact, most of the time we started from a drum loop. I would on most of the tracks. I think we started from the beat upwards. Yeah, so the beat and then the guitar parts would go in, and I think Al would normally be the last person. Unless he had a particular line that he wanted to use, he would probably be the last person in. It really depended. It was always different.
Yeah,
but
it's just interesting. The writing process is different for different artists, and this was your process, right? Your group's process.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's exactly the same for me today, even.
Right.
When I all the stuff on my new records is I do the drum machine stuff here. And then I send Johnny the tapes, and Johnny I send him without the drums, and he puts real drums on it.
Right.
But it always, or most of the time, well, actually, I think all of the stuff at this point, I would put the drums in first here, and then send it to Johnny for him to put the real drums on.
You mean John Lally?
Yeah, John.
You're still working with him?
Yeah, all the drums on my albums are Johnny.
Wow, that's so cool. I'm glad we mentioned him just because I want to get to the formation of Bootsauce and all that in a little bit. But I was listening to, for the prep for this, I was listening to a lot of old Bootsauce stuff. It was really nice. And one of the things I noticed was John Lally plays the hi-hat the way Charlie Watts plays the hi-hat. Because I was a drummer, right? So I was listening really carefully to the drums. And I don't know if you know this about Charlie Watts. He has this fan, and Levon.
No, I know the
hi-hat, right? Yeah, lifting the hand. Right? And I was just going, wow. And I always have to count it myself, and I'm like, wow, he's syncopating the hi-hat and the snare. I'm like, wow, that's so cool. Like, it's an unusual style, It's hard to do.
If that happened, it was something that was done on purpose as a gag.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
This was the show in Daytona Beach. This was the show that you put up in Daytona Beach where you mentioned some friends met each other and got married. And I'm pretty sure, I counted out myself. I was a drummer, so I'm playing the hi-hat.
You can actually see him playing the hats there. So you'll be able to see. It's not every song for sure. And also don't forget that even during those live shows, there was often samples playing. There was always samples playing, and there may have even been drum machine, although I can't remember if that was there. But because we always had a click track coming up from the monitors in the front at us, so there was definitely there was definitely a click track and definitely sample loops of drums. So it was very possible that what you're hearing it could be the sample coming out as well.
Could be.
But we did know about that thing, that weird that weird hi-hat thing. Yeah, because he's the only guy in the world that did that. So like if Johnny did that, he did it on purpose as an homage.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I will say about it is that like when I learned to play drums, you play them together, and it's just I don't know that I don't think I could do it because I just naturally they land the same, and for me to actually syncopate them would be really hard to do, which I think it takes a drummer to do it is what I'm saying.
It's odd. It is definitely odd. I mean, even back in those days, it was only Charlie Watts doing it.
He claims he was only doing it to play because they told him to play louder. They said, you're not playing. So he claims he wanted to get his hand out of the way so he could raise his left hand to swing harder, supposedly. That's what he says. I don't know if that's false modesty or, because it gives a unique sound,
Yeah. But I mean, like, as well, that Charlie was into the jazz thing. So it's very possible that it came from that too.
That's my father says that he believes it's something to do with his jazz influence, but
I would think more than anything that it came from that because that's a very particular thing.
Yeah,
and also side stick and all that.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Instead of
like Charlie Watts was so old school. I think Ringo Starr was the first drummer to play the overhand, to play the way that most drummers play. Just so we're clear to listeners. If you watch drummers from marching bands, for example, they hold the in their left hand because the drummer's over to the side. They have to hold it like with the palm facing up, right? Whereas modern drummers, go ahead.
They call it side stick, and the other one is like the two-handed drums. I obviously
overhand.
You can see me, but yeah. Like a chimpanzee.
Yeah, well,
money for nothing.
Yeah. But my father told me the reason why they played side stick was because in marching bands the snare was over the side, right?
Well, it started with the Louisiana drums, that whole thing,
right?
But because they still do them, they still do it to this day, march through the streets, playing the jazz stuff.
Well, military bands too. I mean, it's
for sure.
Thing,
but
right?
I mean, all that stuff kind of came around together, because if you imagine what was going on back when the days of when jazz was being invented, there wasn't anything else really. Yeah. There was no rock and roll. There was nothing like that. So what they took it from what was in front of them.
Mm-hmm.
And the military stuff was right there.
No, it's the origins of a lot of them. Like I have a theory. Just tell me quickly what you think of this theory. That pretty much every single form of popular music invented in the last 50 years has its roots in the U.S. South, right? So you have, for example, rock and roll comes out of blues, and then you have reggae comes from Jamaicans listening to blues and trying to copy it, and then and then reggaeton and dembo and all those other things that came out of the Latin islands comes from them listening to reggae, and it sort of seems like it all, and then rap comes out of rock and roll as well, right? Which
Yeah.
so
Well, rock and roll and jazz, but yeah, well, I think it was a combination of that sort of Louisiana thing, and also what was left over from the African rhythms that were brought in by the slaves, obviously, because they would, and a lot of that sort of early Christian music, and not early Christian music, but that sort of swamp music or whatever.
Well, certainly country music,
like spirit, spiritual music,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Yeah. So it was a combination of that, and also the rhythms that were brought in from Africa, which would have been right up until the 1850s. Don't forget,
technically,
a lot of that's still there.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. So I think it was a combination of those two things, and I mean, they do say that jazz is the last actual American style of music that originated in the States. Exactly. You know what I mean? Because I think that the blues and all that.
You're including
blues. Well, yeah, including the blues. Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because if you ever talk to a jazz guy, as you know, they'll say, "Well, we're going to do a blues tune," and then you won't know where the hell you are. You know what I mean? Because it's not just like,
yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, I think that it came basically from say Louisiana and the African what was left of people's memories of the African music.
Yeah.
In those days. And then everything spread sort of from there. So they kind of went
the Mississippi River typically.
Because
Chicago, because you have different styles, Kansas City and so on. If you listen to Chicago blues, it's basically early rock and roll. The early rock and rollers were Chicago bluesmen, right?
A lot of those guys, don't forget, went up there. Well, they went up there for work.
Yeah,
they weren't from there.
Yeah,
So I mean, that's
they broke north.
Course. Yeah, absolutely.
The term is they broke north. Break north was the term. Break north. Break north. I didn't know that. Yeah, no, it's sometimes called the Great Migration of Southerners, including poor Southern whites as well, but a lot of blacks as well who moved to the. Because if you go back to 100 years ago to places like Detroit or New York, they had very, very small black communities. Very small. Most of the blacks in the United States then, as now as well to some extent, lived in the former slave states, right? And so they moved to work,
of course.
And they brought their. But as to just going back to the southern states thing, the technically the importation of slaves was banned in 1805, long before the abolition of slavery. But so that meant that the new arrivals, let's say, from Africa stopped happening. So, but what's interesting about New Orleans is New Orleans was the only place in the U.S. South where blacks were allowed to congregate on Sundays. They weren't allowed to in other parts of the U.S. South. So there's this place in New Orleans called Congo Square. Great name, right? Congo Square.
Yeah.
Right. And they would get after church, they would go there on Sundays. They were allowed to in New Orleans, I guess, because it's more libertine there, more relaxed maybe than.
Well, it was also in many ways kind of like the French. The black guys are no problem for black people to be playing in France, all through from the 40s onward, or even earlier than that. Yeah. Whereas they would be out somewhere in the States whereas
going in the back door,
black or white. Yeah,
going in the back door to do a show. I mean, Oscar Peterson, the famous jazz musician, when he played in the South, had to go in the back door with all the other blacks.
All of them. Like, I mean, even when I was a kid, I can sort of remember it. I mean, even then, the racism was much more than it is now. Even though now it's kind of more, I don't know what it's kind of I don't know what's happened, but back then I remember I was with my white grandmother, right? And we were in the airport in Atlanta, and this woman came up to my grandmother and started berating her for having black kids with her.
Oh, wow. Yeah, boy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's like,
that's
whoa,
yeah,
man,
yeah.
and like to see it as a kid, there's my granny, but my grandmother, stood her ground. She didn't
Good for did
take
she?
that.
Yeah, I hope she pushed
Yeah,
back.
yeah. Oh
Screw
yeah, of course she
you,
did. Obviously. Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah,
my
yeah,
grandson. I'm proud of him.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course she did. But it was just weird because I was, you know, we grew up in Canada. It was a little bit there, but not like that.
The
You know.
U.S. South had a very particular. It had a literal up until the 1960s in law. Even it had literally a white supremacist structure. I mean, like
Oh
actually
yeah,
in
yeah.
a literal sense. I mean, there were laws that favored whites over blacks. It bothers me a lot when people use the term white supremacy to talk about the United States today or Canada today or something. Just because
Well,
I
it's
mean,
certainly different. It's
yeah, I
certainly
mean,
different
it's
now.
hard to. It just if you go to if you use the term white supremacy for the Jim Crow South or for Nazi Germany, that sort of makes sense to me because those places really did have a structure where that said very openly, whites are superior, and here's the structure, and this is what we're gonna do. Whereas like if you have some sort of amorphous thing where it's supposed to be, it's just not the same thing, and it's taboo to be racist today, which is good, right? I mean, isn't that a good
Well,
thing? It's
absolutely,
like, right?
absolutely. And the thing is, people are still racist anyway.
Sure.
Whatever. But
Yeah,
yeah. But I mean, like I was watching Dave Chappelle yesterday, and he said,
he's great.
"Well, I walked into a Kentucky Fried Chicken, and the guys behind the counter were wearing Ku Klux Klan hoods, and I said, 'Where's my chicken hat?'" He
Yeah.
said, "I said, I wasn't mad at the hoods. I said,
My
I wanted
chicken
my
was late.
chicken."
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
my
my
chicken. Yeah.
chicken was
He said,
late.
I don't have to go work at. I don't work at Kentucky Fried Chicken. They do.
I love how Chappelle kind of he
He's
sort of
hilarious.
he's great, and he sort of makes light of these things in a way. Like we really
Oh
should
yeah,
be.
yeah.
It's great just to kind of laugh at these things. I mean, not that the KKK is a laughing matter necessarily, but he turns it
No,
into
no,
that,
but
right?
no, but I mean, it's just the outrageousness of the even the idea.
And the
You know.
image, going into
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
KFC and
yeah.
there's a guy wearing a hood, right? It's like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
right,
It's
right. It's like,
crazy.
yeah. Yeah, no, I mean
Oh boy.
the connection between blacks and popular music is so interesting to me. And this is my theory is rooted in the idea that the blacks all through Latin America also created all kind of interesting music forms. My wife
Oh
is
yeah, yeah, for
Dominican, and
sure.
there's like bachata comes from there, and in South America, it's just and in every case, including the United States, it's usually these African things mixed with a lot of European elements. Right on the Latin islands, it's mixing with Spanish forms of music
Right, right,
on
right,
the
right.
English speaking islands and in North America, it was with other forms of mostly country music and kind of like folk music
Mm.
from Ireland and things like that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Hybridizing,
yeah.
right? You get rock and roll and comes out of that. Really, it comes from a
Yeah,
hybrid of
it's
those,
incredible.
right?
I mean, the whole story of the music thing it's incredible, really. You know, and in some ways, because I've often thought to myself, I'm getting old and I never made any money and I never whatever, and I think to myself, it kind of what a kind of stupid lifestyle to live, to be a musician, but you don't really have the choice,
What do you
you just
mean?
are what you are.
Yeah, so
Well,
you feel like
I
you're
mean,
drawn to
I
it.
never, I like, yeah, like I wasn't going to be a house painter. Yeah, I tried. I couldn't do it. I hated it.
You fell off the ladder.
You know what I mean?
Too drunk up on the
Yeah,
ladder.
yeah, I didn't. No, yeah, that's it. But I know there's some people in the, whose houses out there have got my name scrawled under their floorboards.
Somewhere in St.
Um,
Lambert or
yeah, no, no,
yeah, something
yeah,
like
St.
that.
Lambert. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it actually it was probably the West Island, actually, where that happened. But anyway,
Okay.
um,
Well, and what you're saying
yeah, because
reminds me
I'm,
of what Chris Berry said when he said that when the 222s broke up and he was about 20 or something, And he was
Yeah.
like, "What am I going to do? I'm all I knew how to do was music. I didn't know
That's
anything else, and I couldn't do it. I
that's
didn't want
exactly.
to." And so he went to England, and it
Yeah,
sounds like you're
yeah,
saying the same thing.
absolutely.
You just loved doing the music and felt drawn, pulled into it.
Well, I also, I mean, I sort of threw myself all in. So if I hadn't have continued, it would have been almost like saying, like giving up or something.
Right.
I don't know. It
Yeah.
didn't, and plus I had this thing. I mean, I hear something. I want to be able to do it, and I want to be able to put it down. I want other people to hear it, and that kind of way. It's kind of, I don't know. It's a weird thing. And also now, so now that the music, like, I'm not really gigging live anymore. In fact, I'm not gigging live at all anymore. I've got one show coming up in Kinsale at the end of the month, but it's kind of, I've gone from one ridiculously hard kind of thing, being in music, to going into video, which is equally as hard. I mean, you'd think I'd learned my lesson by now, but no.
But you don't seem unhappy
Yeah.
to me.
The
You've
only
never, yeah, you
Oh
never
no, I'm
seem,
not.
yeah,
No, no, no.
right,
I'm not. No, no. Of course not. I'm totally happy, obviously. But I mean, I think the only thing I could have done worse for myself was maybe become a dancer. You
right.
know,
Yeah. I don't think you've
because
got
that's
the right
really hard.
body shape for it, Sonny. You don't seem,
Yeah, yeah, I know.
yeah.
Yeah, that beautiful pear-shaped body of mine. But
No, but what you're saying
I think,
about being drawn into it is reminds me of the actor Michael Imperioli, Imperioli, I don't know how to pronounce his name, from The Sopranos. He was talking about how when he was young and trying to be an actor, and he was taking an acting class, and one of the students in the class asked the teacher, like, should I be, studying something or doing something as a backup? And the teacher said, if you have a backup, maybe you shouldn't be here. Like,
yeah,
in other
yeah,
words, if you're thinking about an exit strategy, you're probably not cut out to go through the hardships to do this life, basically,
yeah, yeah.
right?
What
If
is
that makes
yeah.
sense. I don't know if that
No
applies to
plan
you.
B?
Yeah. Well, if you
Yeah.
have a plan B, you don't have the chops and the grit necessary to, right?
Well, again, I mean, there are a lot of people that don't have the chops that are still great musicians,
Yeah.
and have do great stuff or can write great music. It doesn't. I'm not one of these people that think that. Well, I mean, it's a little self-serving to say that I don't have the chops either. But so what? I do what I do, and I know what I do, and
Right.
I understand music as well as anybody else.
Yeah.
So, and I think that the chops doesn't matter. I think the idea of being able to put yourself out there and also to express yourself somehow is more important than whether or not the chops are there. Kind of. I think,
When you say put yourself out, it's having kind of the courage, let's say, to expose, not to expose yourself literally, but emotionally, like, you're up on a stage in front of people. People can see you, and you're
yeah,
vulnerable in some senses, right?
yeah. No, it's
Right.
a crazy thing, and funnily enough, myself and Al back in Montreal, we were, I can't remember what happened. Somehow we got asked to present an award at one of the awards shows,
Right.
myself and Al,
Yeah.
and we were both stymied. Like, what? I can't do this. What? What talk in front of people?
Yeah.
I can't do that. But
Like
it's
wear
so
a
weird because
tuxedo and stand in front
yeah,
of the
just get up
microphone
in
and
front of
tell
them. Like,
jokes and all that,
yeah, yeah,
right?
no, but it wasn't even that. All we had to do was, open an envelope and say who won. Oh, excuse me.
Interesting.
Um,
And you couldn't do it? You didn't do
yeah,
it?
oh no, we did do
You
it.
did do it. You
Of
did.
course we
Okay.
did. Yeah,
Okay.
but the thing is, but we were every night we were playing to thousands of people, but then we couldn't stand there and say, "Hi, my name is Sonny, and this is Alan Bacules. We're here to present an award." I just couldn't do it, man. I was like frozen.
Well, part of
But
that is
I learned something.
yeah. Well, what did
Well,
you?
I mean, I learned
Yeah.
something from that, and from then, ever since then, I decided, all right, if I'm after the Bootsauce thing and all the bands I've been with since then, I've always taken it as my job to present the band and be the sort of the boss, the spokesperson.
Right.
So I actually
Right.
now I have no problem getting
Right.
up and speaking in front of people.
Interesting.
But I did it because I was like, oh my God, I can't do it. You know what I mean?
Challenge.
There's something about it but yeah, there's some
Challenge. Yeah.
not even the challenge. It was like I was petrified. It was not that I couldn't speak. It's I was scared to get up.
Yeah.
I mean I knew half the people in the audience even, and I was terrified.
Yeah. Well, I want to.
Yeah, weird.
Yeah.
Actually, another funny, quick little story about Chris Barry. When I was a kid, because I obviously knew Chris, right? Or the band of 222s. I thought he was French because I'd never spoken to the guys,
Okay.
And then when I finally realized, hey, wait a minute, man, Chris speaks pretty good English. I was like, what?
That's interesting.
Amazing.
Well, the other guys were French, right? The other
that was it.
Right.
You see, because we'd actually never interacted, so I knew that the 222s were a French band, and everyone knew about them, of course, in Montreal.
Yeah,
but it never in my head actually, I never put it together that Chris wasn't French, or when he first joined him, couldn't even speak French or whatever,
Yeah, that was one of the more interesting things he talked about, how they kind of wanted him because he was an Anglo. They thought he was authentic and everything.
It's incredible. Yeah, it just shows you what kind of a place Montreal was.
I think that's an interesting point, that it really, like, there's something unique about the linguistic relationship in Montreal that leads to these kinds of things, where a band like the 222s is around and they think we can get an Anglo, it's going to be better. Like, where else could that happen? Right. I can't imagine, that particular mixture of things, confluence of events coming together. And Chris growing up in English, listening to the New York Dolls and all the Anglo stuff, right? Is like the mixing of those two things, I think, is interesting.
Yeah, I remember some of those shows. I never went, I didn't see the Dolls show, but I remember when those were happening. And I remember what was it? Well, it was the Vibrators show at down in Old Montreal. And it was Spike that was on the door. That's all I had. Really? Spike. He was the door. He was because he's 6'6" or whatever, whatever he is.
He's a good guy to have working your door. You don't want to cross that guy.
Right. 6'6", right? But that's how I met him. That's how I met all those guys. And it was funny because we were all kind of musicians, but like some of us were NDG and some of us were Westmount, and there was a little
bit South Shore, right?
Yeah. But at that point, I think. Yeah, I was still living in the South Shore, actually.
Yeah.
But I started because I was working at the Oasis music store, so I was actually in town a lot more than I was on the South Shore. And I think I'm pretty sure I moved into town when I was around 16.
Right.
Or maybe 17 when I moved actually into town.
Was that the famous apartment on Jean Talon Street?
Yeah, that was that. Yeah. And also because I went to school at Mind, so I was in town anyway, going to school there. So, or what little school I did go
to. I just want to return a little bit to what you were saying about being scared in front of an audience. There's something about a certain context specificity. So, for example, when I first started teaching, like over 20 years ago, I was petrified to get up and just my knees were jelly. Now I get up, I walk in, it's like, it's totally comfortable because I know what I'm doing and I'm comfortable. But what's interesting is, I took some classes about 10 years ago at Université de Montréal.
That was your first mistake.
No, but just being back in a classroom, it was like, as a student, I remember I was like, if I raised my hand, I was kind of scared, like, everyone's going to kind of look at me. Yeah, and yet it's weird. It's like, if I'm the guy up in the front, it's okay. But if I'm back in that role of being a student, somehow it's all of a sudden I'm back in the, the kind of insecure mode.
Like how long? I had nightmares about high school, up until I was probably 30. Like, I didn't go to school today. What? You wake up, So of course, it's like putting yourself in a place that you're not used to. It's it's difficult,
That's
man.
what I mean about you on the stage with
Yeah,
the
yeah,
envelope,
difficult for
right?
sure.
It's like all of a sudden you're there with your tuxedo on, and you're like everything's different. You don't have your guitar in your hand. You don't,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Right. You're in this
How am I?
completely different role,
How am I going to hide my belly?
right? Exactly, right. Yeah. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about the formation of Bootsauce, and it always struck me that it was you and Alan who kind of formed it, and the other guys joined after. Is that not true? Is that?
No, not really.
And
I
when
was
did
the
it
last
form?
in.
Mid '80s, like '80 after you came back from Paris, right? Is that?
Yeah, after I came back from Paris, but it was, I guess, the end of, I guess it was '89 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So Perry and Drew were already friends and had been friends from high school or whatever else, and they had just come back from London, where they had gone to try and make it in music, and
Oh,
didn't work
oh,
out or whatever, right? So they became friends with Esther. Do you remember Esther, our friend Esther?
I don't
Esther
think I
Torgeman,
do.
Esther and Gabby?
Actually, Gabby, is that person Czech? No.
No,
Okay, that's somebody
no.
else. I'm thinking of a different
Oh.
person. Yeah.
Anyway,
In any case,
these
yeah.
two friends, these two friends of ours, Gabby and Esther, and they met Perry and Drew, and uh, Perry and Drew had a sampler, and they were messing about with that, doing drum loops and all this kind of crazy stuff in the room, and then for some, I guess I came over to Esther's house, or I mean maybe it was Gabby's house at the time. I can't remember, whatever. In any case, came over and I saw this. Hey, well, I got an idea. We'll put this on top of that,
Interesting.
and
Yeah.
so the three of us were the initial band,
Okay.
and also, I mean, for we didn't really have a bass player for a while when we started out, and then they were trying to market us. Like with the first things, I remember they wouldn't even have Al in the pictures because they wanted to have the three of us to be like those guys. She drives me crazy. I can't
Oh,
remember what the name of
yeah.
that band was,
Yeah.
but there was the three guys, and so
Yeah. Yeah. I
uh,
forget the
uh,
name, but yeah.
they tried to market us
Not
as that.
Milli Vanilli.
No, no, no,
No, but
no,
that
no.
there were two guys in Milli Vanilli. So that they
Yeah,
weren't
yeah.
singing. But yeah,
But
yeah.
these guys actually wrote their own music and
And
sang it.
actually did it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I can't remember
Yeah.
what the name
But
of
I
it.
remember that
But the song
song
was
though.
she.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember the song.
Anyway, so the guys were trying to market us like that, and it took a long time to get Al into the pictures and everything else, and it was a real, like, it was just naivete.
What do you mean?
People, they, well, I mean, they, instead of like letting us be what we were, they tried to make us something else,
Right.
because they couldn't
Right.
figure out what to do. You know what I mean? So, and we like, excuse me, I need some water. Hang
Yeah.
on.
So if I could fill in the gap here just quickly, it sounds like you got together with those three and you formed a band, and it sounds like you had some sort of connection with a record A&R guy or something before Alan got involved. Even that's I didn't know all that.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Just trying to think. Well, I don't know. Well, it was Steve Shipp anyway.
Okay, so Steve Shipp,
Right.
your former manager, was
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Was so we somehow, because I went to school with him, so
Okay.
that's how I
Right.
knew. And so I went to him to try and figure out if there's anything that we could do as a band, blah blah blah. And then he was in touch with Corky Lang from Mountain, who had just recently became the A&R man for Polygram in Canada.
Okay. Right.
So that's how that kind of all started. And it was weird little stories. Like once, like years before that, Mountain were playing in the Spectrum, right? And I was backstage for some reason or whatever, and Corky says, "Hey, who announces the bands around here?" And I said, "I do." And he got up,
And you got
like,
up and
"Ladies and
announced.
gentlemen," from the curtain closed and
Nice. So just
yeah.
to be clear,
So
you mean the Canadian band Mountain, right?
well, they were
They had a
American.
big hit, right? Weren't they
Yeah,
Canadian?
Mississippi Queen.
Mississippi Queen. That's it.
Yeah, was the song. So Leslie and Felix, I think, were from the States, and Corky was from Montreal.
Okay.
But I think he had gone to the States. He was young too when he was in that band. I think he co-wrote Mississippi Queen, so I think he still gets a bit of cash from that.
Well, that was a
Even now.
huge hit in
Oh,
what,
it
the
was a massive
70s or
hit.
whatever. It was
And
massive.
they were
Right?
still doing the tours up until Leslie died a couple of years ago, and they were still doing down in the southern states. They would do the
Interesting.
Monsters of Rock or whatever, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, all right. So you that's how you met Corky Lang, and then
Well,
that.
that's how I
Yeah,
met him originally. It was funny
right.
how it came around, and it was Corky. Said, "You remember me from?" Oh yeah, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. So like just weird how small town things are, and also, in those days to get a record contract was impossible. It was like
Yeah.
you couldn't get a record contract for anyway. But the actual getting of the contract was the easiest thing I ever did. It just
Interesting.
happened.
Yeah.
Weird,
Wow.
and it's so weird, like how you just have to be in the right spot, or in those days you just had to be, the right person and be in the right spot at the right time, and boom, you're in.
Mm-hmm.
And in this club that nobody could get into. It's weird. Yeah,
There's
it's so
often
strange.
luck and chance in these things.
Oh, it was exactly that, and
Yeah.
it just happened, like me and Perry and Drew meeting up. It was just like, oh, actually, that was it. Neil, I think, was going to play bass with.
Neil, Hong
Yeah,
Kong Neil.
yeah. Who's in
Really?
L.A. now? Who's in
Okay.
Hollywood? Yeah, I think
Yeah.
he. Yeah, I think originally that was that. Yeah, originally I think he might have even. Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah. I didn't even know he played music, actually.
Yeah,
That's
he's a bass
interesting.
player.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
but then whatever, there was a falling out or something out with Drew and Neil or something, and then we went looking. And I guess Al happened to be free at the time, and we hooked up, and that was it. After that,
Alan told me that he used to work in a club or something, and you used to go there or something like that.
Yeah,
This is like 30
maybe.
years ago when I first
Yeah, I can't remember. I
lived with
can't
him.
remember. But
Yeah.
yeah, very possibly it was something like that.
But what's
Uh,
interesting to me about that is that Alan's playing, I mean, this is with all due respect to you and all the others, but his playing really, I think, defined the group. I mean, Bootsauce's sound is really interesting. It's very much a 90s sound, which is, I think, a compliment. It's got sort of this sort of Red Hot Chili Peppers type. And you guys, I think, were even almost before the Chili Peppers. I mean, when you started
we
in the late
were
80s,
well, we
right?
were we were around the same time, and the thing is, we knew of the Chili Peppers when we started out, and this was back when the Chili's were kind of more of a dance band almost.
Right,
They were
right,
more funk dance than they were funk rock, if you know what I
right.
mean. And so
Yeah.
we said, oh well, this is perfect. This suits us down mightily.
The
And
slapping, the bass slapping was a kind of
yeah,
defining
all of
thing,
that kind of
right?
thing. It was like
Yeah.
well, actually, it was probably right at the end of where you were allowed to even slap bass anymore. Um,
Yeah.
but it's funny you say that, because I don't think, I'm fairly certain that, like Corky was saying, oh man, less of that fucking bass playing, blah blah blah, like we have some more drums or something,
That's hilarious.
what I mean.
Yeah.
And, so it wasn't really up until the second album was really where Al came into the thing, where at the beginning it was such a weird thing, like literally all the first pictures, posters of us, everything else was just the three of us,
Right.
and we had to fight to get Al in. And in fact, I don't even have any of the ones with three of us anymore. They're all
Interesting.
gone, and I only have a few pictures from those days.
Wow.
So I don't think that initially the bass was part of the thing at all.
Came
I
in
think
later as a
yeah,
sound.
I
Yeah.
mean later. I mean, it was right at the beginning. Obviously, it was say halfway through the tenure of the first record, like before where things Al's on the record. So like if it's not like Johnny is only on the second record, like he's not on he
The
wasn't on the first
drummer.
one at all.
Yeah. Drummer.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, the drummer, yeah, John Lawley, Fat Boy,
Fat boy. Yeah.
yeah. Actually, it was his birthday yesterday.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's just that it's because I like listening to it again because I was a fan back in those days and I really enjoyed re-listening to it. And there's a bunch of things. There's the slap bass. There's also sometimes Drew does sort of semi-rapping, which was a thing that started. This is probably in the later stuff more like the I'm guessing, but
Oh
like
no,
I
I
lose
mean
track of which albums. That was a thing in the '90s. There's kind of a mixing of different styles together.
yeah,
I'm thinking,
that was definitely happened. Oh no, we had that right from the start, I'd say.
really, yeah.
Because I mean, if you think about what was the song on the first album, "Sex Marine" is a kind of a rap tune.
Mm-hmm. Because it
So yeah,
seems
no,
like rap was getting really popular at that time, so it was sort of influencing other music forms. I think,
well,
basically,
for sure. I
right?
mean, I mean, I've still got an Akai S950 in the box right here.
Nice,
You know,
yeah.
from those days. Um, um, yeah, no, I mean, we were right around, and plus we were in New York a lot, so we were right around those guys. You know,
Right.
there was a lot of. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't remember meeting them, but there was a lot of those kind of guys that were involved in doing um Fear of a Black Planet and those one
Public Enemy.
Public Enemy,
That's
but
Public
the kind
Enemy.
of the the behind the scenes guys,
Rick
not the
Rubin,
actual guys from the
Rick
band.
Rubin, and
No, it wasn't.
Russell Simmons. No, so I'm just thinking of all the guys behind. There was Def Jam Records was the
Yeah,
record company, right?
it was like also the the fact that we were pretty well smashed all the time. I don't remember a whole lot of it. But yes, there was a whole bunch of people that were involved like that, and also like I look at my phone book, and I got Paisley Park's number in there because like the guys from Paisley Park were wanting to help us out and
Nice.
this kind of stuff. So it was like all this weird stuff, and we were also on Island in the States,
Okay.
Island Records.
Right.
So we would have been friends with the people from Salt and Pepper and all that, like
Nice.
back in those days,
Nice. Yeah.
and of course Joan Jett and that
Yeah.
too on the rock side of things. Joan sang on one of the records as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
she sings backup
Yeah.
on one of the songs,
Yeah.
uncredited, but yeah, she's on there.
Yeah.
You can hear her if
Right.
um
I just wanted to since we're talking about the sort of the musicality of Bootsauce, let's say, what influence, if any, do you think your jazz background and specifically your father has on that group, or is there none? Is it something apart altogether? I don't know.
well, yeah, I mean I don't think there was anything directly other than not being scared to try stuff. You know what I mean? Like he was never scared of playing anything. So we had a certain spirit of throw everything in the mix and let's go, man. I don't care. I'm here. What are you gonna do?
So a kind of an openness to just trying new things, something
Yeah, for sure.
creative, right?
Definitely.
And you figured that your
Definitely.
father was a lot like that in his style of
Well, he kind of
playing.
had to be, and also he would have been more on the sort of heavy end of the jazz scale, I would say. More on the kind of experimental, rather than like the straight ahead jazz guys. I don't know who I could. Although okay, well,
Yeah. Go ahead.
actually, just
Yeah.
speaking of this, like even though he and Ed Bickert played together,
Yeah.
Ed Bickert would have been to me like the more straight jazz guy, and my old man the crazy jazz guy kind of thing.
A good description.
And
Yeah.
did you?
I knew Ed Bickert. I saw Ed Bickert play a lot as well as
Oh,
my father. Yeah.
absolutely.
My
For
father
sure
played with Ed Bickert a lot. Yeah.
Did you know that they sold his guitar a couple of days ago?
No.
That Telly?
No.
Yeah, I because
Do we know the
he
price? Do we know how much?
yeah 23 grand.
Wow.
Yeah, Long was it Long McQuaid or one of the shops in Toronto had it.
Ontario. Yeah.
But the thing is, he stopped playing. He never gigged. His wife died, and he never gigged again.
Yeah.
So I remember Don Thompson was wondering. I said, I wonder whatever happened to that guitar, and whatever happened, and and then Ed died, and didn't hear anything about the guitar at all. Like it
And
was
then
just
boom,
disappeared.
sold.
And
Yeah.
then it came up for sale maybe a week or two ago, and it was gone. 22
Gone
grand.
fast, yeah.
Yeah.
But your father's musical style, I find absolutely fascinating. I read somewhere once an interview with him where he described how he listened to a lot of horn players when he was growing up,
Hmm.
and he tried to kind of imitate the sound of a horn, which I can really hear when he plays. He's got a very unusual kind of tone
Yeah.
way of
Yeah, for
playing.
absolute. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like he doesn't sound like Ed Bickert at all,
Yeah,
really.
it doesn't sound
But
like a drum.
there's
Yeah,
yeah, but there. I mean, I'm sure I've got one of the songs of him and Ed Bickert on my YouTube channel somewhere. I'm sure I do. But they played together a couple of times. I think they made an album together as well
really.
at some
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
And there's also I'm just trying to think who else he would have played with from those kind of guys,
The Canadian jazz.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, right. Well, he told me once that he has this great story about how Miles Davis called him up at his
Yeah,
place. He picks up his phone and he's like,
it
he
is
hears his voice.
Miles, man.
Yeah, hey, Sonny, this is Miles. Like,
Yeah, and he said, "Yeah, my ass, it's Miles." Bloop, hang up.
yeah. So I
But it
mean,
was him. Yeah,
yeah, and so I'm not sure if I think he did play with Miles
oh,
Davis.
he did. Yeah,
He
yeah, he
did, which
did.
is really, I mean that's up in the stratosphere, right? I mean, Miles
Well, I
Davis
mean
is, you know,
that's literally as jazz as you can get.
it's
It
yeah, I
doesn't
mean
get
it's
more jazz than
yeah,
Miles, really.
for instance, he's kind of right at the top end of jazz, and
Well, he's the biggest jazz star there ever was,
yeah,
wasn't
yeah, and really, also one thing I love about Miles Davis is the name of one of his albums, "Bitches Brew." I just think that's such a
he?
great name for. I don't know what it is. It's something. It's politically incorrect, but not at the same time. It's kind of like,
Well,
yeah,
it wasn't politically incorrect back then.
yeah,
There was no
yeah.
such thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just it's interesting what you're saying. So you don't feel there's that much of a connection between your father's music and Bootsauce. It sounds like. It sounds like,
Well,
except for the
not
openness,
really.
right? Like the
Yeah,
willingness.
because like, yeah, not really. Because I mean, it was kind of pop music, really. I mean, it was a little, maybe slightly a bit more than pop music, but I mean, that's all it was, really. And also, we would try and write the stupidest lyrics we could think of, like, I mean, literally, like laughing our heads off, like writing catastrophes, and that, that
Yeah.
whatever,
Well,
and
touching cloth, right? Just
touching cloth, yeah.
right. Maybe you could describe to listeners what that is a reference to. I don't know.
Well, it was an old joke. Whose dad was it? Oh man. Oh geez, I have to look this up now.
What
Hang
it
on a
means to
second.
touch
Can you?
cloth, right?
Well, no, because I have to give a
Give
proper.
credit where credit is due,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Wait a minute now.
The irreverence of the lyrics is something. Another thing that's a great feature of Bootsauce that is
Well,
reminiscent of that time. I think the Beastie Boys' first album has wacky,
oh
crazy
shit.
lyrics like that too. So
Yeah, well, that I think it was Dave Gossage's dad. That's who it
okay,
was.
Dave
So
Gossett.
the Gossage brothers,
Oh yeah,
famous
musicians, local musicians.
musicians,
Yeah,
and he would be sitting there and go, "Hey, Dave, I'm touching cloth." Meaning that he had to go to the toilet, And of course, nobody had ever heard this, and so we said, "Hey, that sounds like a good name for a song." Yeah,
so he
yeah,
would say
funny.
that. And that's hilarious. Yeah, because I thought that was just something that people would say, but I guess it was unique to the Gossage.
Yeah, no, as
Right?
far as I know, well, I had never heard it before.
Yeah, neither
Before
have
Dave
I.
told us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it might have been an Irish thing though, but that's
I'm
even
wondering.
that I'm not
Yeah.
positive.
I mean, the
Not
name
not
Gossage
positive.
sounds like an old school Montreal Irish name to me. Just,
Well, I mean, Dave is fully into the Irish music scene too, and he's a fantastic Irish flautist. Like, he's
really.
one of the best. He's great. Like,
Last time I
yeah.
saw one of those guys was at the Jazz Festival once about 15 years ago. Who's the one who plays drums? One of them plays drums, doesn't he? One of the Gossage
Well,
guys. There's
yeah,
a
yeah.
smiley, there's a really happy looking guy. He's
There's
always got
there's a bass player. There's a
yeah.
drummer.
It's
There's a whole
all
bunch of the brothers.
I
Yeah.
think they were all up on
Which
the
one?
stage, and I was like, "Hey, there's the Gossage guys."
Yeah, Tom was
Tom,
the
Tom.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
I'm fairly certain that Dave is still playing in downtown Montreal all the time. Like at was it Hurley's? What's the
Hurley's.
Irish pub?
Well, there's Hurley's. There's also the old Dublin, but I'm not
No,
sure.
it's
Yeah,
Hurley. It's Hurley's.
there's a few of them down there. Yeah. Okay. Just to close it out with your father. Just one last thing I wanted to talk about with your dad is, um, do you would you say your father is? I mean, it's hard to gauge who is more successful because your father is this sort of jazz great, but I'm guessing you sold more records and had more fame among the population. Is that maybe a reasonable?
Well, I mean, Al was telling me recently that we sold 650,000 albums.
A lot of albums.
Yeah.
And you're known among people. Like, I mean, for this podcast, my friend Thierry, he's a bass player friend of mine who I did a podcast with, a musician. And when he heard you were going to be on, he's like, "Oh, that's great! I'm really looking forward." I was a Bootsauce fan and everything. And so you guys are known, and but your father is known in jazz circles.
Well, look,
right?
I mean, I'll put it to you this way. I a few years ago bumped into Joe Zawinul, right? At a jazz festival over here in France at a place called Marciac. So I went up to Joe Zawinul and I said, "Joe, hi, I'm Sonny's son. Yeah, Sonny Greenwich's son." And he went, Sonny was the greatest, man. He was the greatest guitar player that ever been, man. I fucking love Sonny. You know what I mean? How's he doing? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So within those guys, he was absolutely, but most
he's
of
legendary in some senses. He had such
absolutely.
a unique style musically. He almost
I'll give you another example. At the same festival, I was backstage at a Keith Jarrett concert.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And if you know Keith Jarrett, all that doesn't happen.
Well, isn't he some kind of Kenny G type? Isn't it? No, is that
Keith Jarrett? No, my God, Keith Jarrett is the greatest piano player that's ever lived.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was with Jack the Jeanette, and who had allowed me to come backstage, and Keith had everyone from backstage gone, so it was just Keith, Jack the Jeanette. I can't remember who was on. It was like Dave Holland on bass or somebody as well, and me back there. That was it. Nobody else. Not like no one working, no guards, no anything. They had completely and utterly cleared the backstage.
Amazing.
It was amazing. Yeah, incredible.
So, and your father was known among. Did they?
Well, that's how I got in there. Obviously,
okay, I see.
Jack,
right.
Yeah, Jack. I had written to Jack, saying that I was going to be at this festival, and if I could come and meet him, and I said I'd bring some of my dad's records or whatever, because at the time it was hard to find anything that he had done, So I brought them over to Jack to hear, to give to him rather. And so amongst those guys, he was, there was definitely. I mean,
that's kind of.
Everybody. All those guys, like even like McCoy Tyner, who I met a few times, that would just like, yeah, sure, guest list, Sonny Jr. Boom,
yeah,
because of my dad, right?
Well, it's sort of like, and so you chose to, or I'm not sure if you chose to, if you were drawn into a more of a popular music form and a whole milieu that was more pop, which is really cool. Like I'm actually more of a fan of that kind of. I'm not a big jazz music listener. But I wonder if there's a sense that, I mean, is it hard to be in the shadow of such a sort of jazz legend in some senses? I don't know if that makes sense. Hard is the wrong word, but.
Yeah, no, I never really thought of it like that. To me, it was just, that's my old man. Yeah, right. Whatever, cool.
Yeah.
Well,
it's sort of like, it's hard to do the comparison because, your father's not super famous. He's within a certain, like a very respected, genre of music. Let's say it's sort of a high level.
Yeah. Well, but again, all okay, I'll put it this way: people don't even remember who Muhammad Ali is.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Not like who the hell knows who Sonny Greenwich Sr. is, right?
Or Junior or anything.
Junior.
You know, like
Yeah.
who knows? Fuck Bootsauce. No, who knows? You know what I mean? It's like they don't remember last year. Forget
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
30 years ago or whatever. So like, I mean, I take it all in stride. Like I don't care.
Yeah.
It's yeah,
Yeah, no, no,
it's
it's hard to even ask the question because it's not like your father's like famous like Keith Richards or something, right? He's not. He's just like that's what's so interesting to me about it is I don't even think he's. It's just the difference in qualitative judgment. I think is the difference,
well.
right?
I'll put it to you. I'll
You
put
know,
it to you this way: that anywhere in the jazz scene, I'm in on his name alone.
right?
In
Yeah,
the
forget
jazz
about
scene.
Bootsauce, right? They don't care
Yeah,
about
yeah. Forget
Bootsauce.
about
Yeah,
Bootsauce. They've
yeah,
never ever heard of it. You know,
yeah.
but in the jazz scene, they'd heard my dad. But of course, now it's many years later. It's not so much anymore. Even
Well, a lot of
it's
those
funny.
guys have
Like,
gotten really old, and some have passed
well,
on. And,
half of them are dead. I mean,
yeah,
more than half
exactly.
of them. Pharoah Saunders died last week, and literally, there's no one left of that
That
era.
generation. Yeah.
Yeah, and also the fact that half of that generation died 40 years ago.
Right. Yeah. All the drug addicts or whatever. Like
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah.
exactly. So
Yeah.
yeah, funny thing.
Well, yeah, no,
Um,
it's not, it's just something, you're in very, very different spheres, let's say, you and your father, like in terms of
yeah,
musical kind of
but we did that
world.
album together as well. That meantime, remember
Right.
that. So like
Right.
that was fun. That was kind of the foreshadowing of kind of the stuff that I'm doing myself now.
Interesting.
Which is kind of
Yeah.
more kind of a hybrid music, where I want to try and bring some of my rock sensibility to this jazz thing, and do
Mhm.
weird stuff, and that's literally what I'm doing at this moment,
Interesting. Yeah.
for myself.
I've really enjoyed some of the stuff you've been doing recently. I may want to
Yeah,
return to that at a my future podcast, some of the more recent stuff you're doing. But
yeah.
I do
Well,
remember. Go ahead.
well, I was gonna say maybe we could do it after the next album comes out.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. That'd be
Because
great.
I'm like I'd say 75% through the next record,
Nice.
so
Okay.
it'll be
I do have a couple of things just more about your dad. I do
yeah.
remember once going to see at Concordia with you. We went and saw him play. You may remember Steve Shipp was with us. He
Yeah.
drove us there.
Yeah.
Or maybe I can't remember. I drove or he drove, but anyway. And I remember at that concert, your father actually pointed you out in the audience. He said, "Oh, my son Sonny is here today," or
Yeah.
whatever. And everyone kind of turned around and looked. And I remember later I don't know, we were out drinking or something, and you sort of said to me or some people, you like. It felt like I think in the Flintstones, when people shrink down, like that's how you felt. Everyone got turning around, looking at you,
Yeah.
which made me think like, well, there's the context thing again, right? Like you're
Yeah.
in that different context, and then
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
father son. Like this is my father, the great musician, and I'm his son. Like you want to be kind of like the approval, all the kind of stereotypical stuff maybe is going on. I don't know if you wanted to comment on that.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, I don't remember that time in particular, but I mean, it happened quite a bit back. Obviously, he. Yeah, sure. Why he probably loved what we were doing with Bootsauce. He thought it
He
hilarious.
did. He did.
Yeah,
I read in
yeah, for sure.
interviews. I remember with him. That was another thing I
Yeah,
noted down was I remember reading interviews where he specifically said, "I really like Bootsauce's music,
yeah.
really good, and all that." So
Well, yeah, because we were we, kind of far out,
yeah,
and really really stupid too.
so he liked. It sounds like he liked the irreverent nature
Yeah,
of
yeah, of course.
Bootsauce,
That's
right?
of
Yeah,
course. That would have been the thing, and also the fact that it wasn't just your regular C and G, C G, C, D chord structure.
unusual
But
musically as well, right?
yeah, that's what I mean. Like it wasn't. It was a bit different. That's we
Yeah,
had fun. We had fun with it, and plus, of course, like getting back to Al.
yeah,
Al came from a jazz thing as well.
yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah,
we
that's
did
That's kind of what I
incorporate
was
it.
saying a minute ago. With Al seemed to be the sort of the not the most unique thing, but there's something about the slap bass which is really different. I mean, it's not in very many pop bands, right? It's not
No,
something.
but let me stop you right there. I think the biggest part of what was going on in terms of going from the jazz into the rock thing was when he was playing the fretless bass.
That's right. Yeah, that's a good
And
point.
he'd do the big
Yeah.
Jacko solo in the middle of the show and everything else. So there was
There's a number of
like
things. Yeah,
yeah,
there's a few things.
we weren't. It's not like we didn't know what was going on. We did. We were aware of the fact that it was jazzy.
Yeah. Yeah, I did notice that actually in that Daytona concert. He at one point he picks up the fretless bass, and I'd forgotten that he used the fretless bass. It was like, wow,
Yeah,
that's really cool, to be able to
yeah. The
with them.
fretless was a big thing, and he did a huge solo in the middle of every show. I think him and Johnny would stay on stage. And I think Johnny would just play like some simple beat behind him so that he could have some tempo or something.
And
And
they just go
and
nuts.
yeah,
Yeah,
and he would just flip
yeah,
out the front. Yeah, great fun. Kind of like in the Jacko style. It was really
interesting.
that sort of thing.
See, that's
And of course
unusual
Jacko.
in pop music to have. First of all, a bass solo is unusual, and then a fretless bass. I
Well,
mean,
it wasn't that unusual back then. They said
really?
people, hey, it's beer time. The bass solo's
Yeah.
coming.
And the
you
real
know,
reason is so you can go have a
yeah,
smoke and chug a cold one,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, the drum solo's almost over, so that means the bass solo's coming.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking now that you mentioned the fretless bass, I can't think of any other pop music group that used. I'm sure there are some. I just can't think of
there,
them.
there, there must be. I can't think of any either.
Yeah. So that
I
is
mean, like,
really unusual. You're
yeah,
right. And
like
very
even
jazzy.
Flea was always fretted.
Yeah.
Even
Right.
though he's, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so
I can't.
that's I mean that's I think that's something just getting back to this thing with your father. I think your group at least did integrate more of that jazz sensibility than you seem to be trumpeting here, let's say. I don't know if
Well,
that
okay,
makes sense.
but let's put it this way: there was no song there that was jazz.
That's
Not
true.
really.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
that's what I mean by that. We had we always had the sensibility in terms of doing what we wanted musically, but there was no song that followed any kind of jazz.
Hmm.
There was no what is it
Well, they all had lyrics for one thing.
there's
Most
two
jazz,
five one.
right?
There was no there was none of that. But there's plenty of jazz songs with lyrics as well. But yeah, so we didn't have any of that.
Hmm.
So that I mean, having the jazz sensibility and also no fear.
Hmm.
Yeah, I agree with that. But in terms of the music, there was nothing that sounded jazz at all, really.
Yeah, that's
You know.
true. So it's more in the live performance because when you talk about the songs, you mean the recorded studio recordings as opposed to the live shows, which are right.
Well, okay. For instance, in "Play with Me," there's the bass solo, the fretless bass solo is in the song. It's on the
Hmm.
record.
Right,
So
right.
it's and that's where he took his solo in the show.
Hmm.
So it is there, but
Right.
it's not jazzy. There's no jazz chords under it. There's no, you know what I mean?
Okay. Okay.
It's his feel and thing going on. But yeah,
Interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. No,
Like
that's really
even like say Stevie Wonder has got more jazz chords than Bootsauce ever did.
Yeah, it sounds like you're looking at it, which is really cool. You're looking at it very technically about what a jazz
Well,
chord would be. I'm thinking of it more as a sensibility as a music listener rather than I don't know if that makes
yeah.
sense,
Well,
right?
okay. Well, this is what, for instance, with jazz music, and what I've always said to people who say they don't like jazz is because they probably never seen anything
Mm,
that
yeah,
is they've never been to a jazz show. They don't realize that you don't need to know music to enjoy jazz. You just let the feeling over you,
yeah,
and that's really what is the most important thing in music anyway.
that's true.
You know,
That's true.
so it, so I mean, it doesn't.
So,
I
so
only look at it when I think of jazz, I think of more sophisticated chord structure,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
Or also there's other players that will go the far opposite. one chord, but make something out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it's something to do with the sophistication melodically, as opposed to get up and dance.
Right. That's interesting.
And that's that's sort of how it sits with me.
Yeah, a couple things you're mentioning there. There's another thing about jazz music. You mentioned the live performance is really important because a lot of jazz musicians, the big thing is to improvise. I heard
For
Bob
sure.
Weir from the Grateful Dead talking to Rick Rubin, and this Rick Rubin has a really cool podcast on music.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of this stuff. Yeah, I love Rick Rubin.
Yeah, and they somehow, I think Rick Rubin made this point. He said that the way that the Grateful Dead would go on stage with like no set list and just get up and play, he said it was like that was like jazz. And then a lot of other rock bands, like say the Rolling Stones, that have a set list, that's more like classical music in some senses, like in the sense that they have everything ready to go and they kind of do it in a pre. It's not a value judgment about what's better necessarily, but just I think you're touching on that, the live performance of jazz. The spontaneity that can happen at a jazz show that you can sense when you're in there listening to it is something really amazing, for sure. Right? I don't know if that makes sense.
But I mean, like, okay, I saw the Grateful Dead, right?
Me too.
I'm going to say something. Yeah, I'm going to say something controversial now. I didn't like it. I fucking hated it.
Really? Yeah.
Well, no, it's not that. It's not so much that. It was just because they were kind of a jam band,
that's it. That's exactly what they were.
I mean, but so half the times the jams weren't that great. That's the thing. Like, I mean, there's so many of their songs that I absolutely love, and so much of the music that I love. Like Ripple or those kind of things. But when I saw them, it was kind of like, well, I wish I had taken the acid now.
What, you didn't?
No, I didn't. Of course, no.
Really?
Not sure. Too old for that, even then. But
because I saw them in Rochester, New York, when I was 16, and I took acid, and it was like I was pretty. Well, it was quite an experience. I think,
yeah, I can imagine. Well, I'm assuming that if we had taken the acid, we would have been better off. It was me and Al, yeah. But anyway,
so you guys were there looking for some sort of a musical thing to happen, and you were more sober, and you were not doing the kind of like.
Well, we weren't sober, but we were more on the booze, I'd say, than anything at that point. We didn't, and we weren't really big smokers or anything, so it was really booze,
So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. I mean, it's also. I mean, I don't mean. Go ahead.
Yeah, the thing is, like all the. I mean, there's so many of those, so much of this of Jerry Garcia's stuff that I absolutely love.
Yeah.
That's the thing that he was there, but he was just noodling some shit that didn't care about.
Well, the other thing is, I'm not making any claim. I don't think Bob Weir is either that the Grateful Dead are doing music that is as complex as a lot of jazz.
No, but I don't.
More or less country music, basically.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, but I mean, country music is.
I love some good country music.
Yeah, there's a lot of country music that's fantastic, and there's a lot of some of the best players in the world come from the country. Country guitar players are like ridiculous, crazy.
Yeah.
They play circles around any of the rock guys, literally.
Well, there's also some country. I mean, Johnny Cash springs to mind. Some country musicians who it's more just they're like, it's like Leonard Cohen. There's something about that individual personality.
Yeah.
Like Johnny Cash used to brag that he only knew 3 chords on the guitar, right? Like maybe he knew 5 or something. He didn't care about that. That wasn't what he was doing. He was
that's what he was telling stories.
Telling stories, and also just there's something about him and the way his gravelly voice and his whole something electrifying about that too.
Well, but also for 100%. But if you also like, I remember when Johnny Cash was, he was playing in Montreal. I didn't even bother to go. I had free tickets. I didn't go to Johnny Cash.
Oh my God, are you serious?
But because at a certain point in his career. Like
he was the old dude. He was the old country dude. Nobody cared about it, right?
The old, exactly. And nobody cared about it. Like, I'm nobody at all.
Yeah.
and his career was like in the dumps, everything else.
Right.
And then he came back,
With Rick Rubin. Rick
that's,
Rubin
well, yeah,
produced.
yeah, with Rick
Yeah.
Rubin,
Yeah.
but
Well, Rick
that's,
Rubin produced his sort of as an older man. He did the
yeah,
thing, and he had a whole
but
revival. Yeah.
the thing about that is that how people remember him now is much different than then. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? He was
Yeah.
just some washed up fucking, guy. Like, nobody
Yeah.
cared about him. But literally, it's like, what? No.
I sort of see Johnny Cash as kind of a crossover artist in the sense that, like most people who don't listen to a lot of country music, like myself, I love Johnny Cash. I think a lot of people who aren't
Yeah.
necessarily country music fans like Johnny Cash,
Yeah.
but
Well,
it's
okay. When he was doing pure country, he was like the top of the heat,
of the stars,
right?
yeah, of
Yeah,
in
the
that
stars
world,
when that
yeah, in that,
in
yeah,
that world.
right,
So he had the best musicians, the best writers, all the rest of it. He was great. But then he fell away, like as anything happens, people, get bored, whatever,
and
they move
move
on to
on.
something
Yeah,
else,
other artists come
Yeah, they
up,
move
and
on to something
yeah,
else.
yeah,
But then when he came back as an older man and basically dying before writing, and put out these 5 albums or whatever it was, I think there was 5 of them. It completely changed what he was
yeah,
and how he will be remembered in music is
yeah,
completely different now than if he had died in 1970
yeah.
or what.
Nobody,
Okay, let me see
yeah.
when.
Well,
I'm just trying to think when
75
it
or
was.
something like that, right?
Yeah,
Kind of,
it
yeah.
must have been like, say, 78 or something like that, or 80 maybe, that he came through, because I was old enough to remember it and old enough to not want to go. I'm sorry I didn't
Even with
go.
free tickets. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And like, I went and saw Rod Stewart with a free ticket.
Oh,
Like, it
man.
was like,
Rod Stewart's great.
and,
Yeah.
but
I like
here's the
Rod Stewart.
thing: he
Yeah.
fucking kicked my ass, man. He kicked my ass around the fucking forum because he was fucking
That must have been
great.
fantastic. Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
thing is that also at the time he was a schmaltz. Do you think I'm sexy?
Yeah.
I don't want to go see that. You know what I mean?
But he must have
But it was
played all
brilliant.
the earlier stuff, like every
Oh,
picture
he
tells a
did. He did.
story and all
He
that,
did
right?
everything. He did.
Yeah.
He did it absolutely all, and he did. Do you think I'm sexy like 4 times in the
Right, right.
show?
Because that was his big thing.
Like when he he'd start out with it, and he was somewhere in the middle, and blah blah, and then the end. But it was absolutely fantastic. Like, he kicked ass, and I'm like,
That's
fuck yeah,
interesting.
okay, I like this.
I don't know what you think as a
But
guitarist of some of the Rod Stewart earlier stuff with Ron Wood. I find just guitar work on those
yeah,
albums
Ron
great.
Wood never did
Slide
anything but the
guitar and
Jeff Beck
stuff.
stuff. The Jeff
Yeah,
Beck stuff always, yeah, but yeah, no, no, yeah, Ron Wood and Keith Richards, really, the guitar stuff I didn't
yeah,
really like it that much.
yeah.
But I was more into the Hendrix thing, so it was kind of more solo
Right.
and all that.
Yeah.
Whereas they weren't, but Jeff Beck, on the other hand, he was always, you could never figure out what the hell he was doing.
Yeah,
He was like,
it's pretty
how
wild.
the heck? Yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
Like, still to this day, he's
His
brilliant
style actually is very jazzy to me. I don't know if it
for
sounds to
sure.
me,
But
right?
he literally did jazz tunes,
Right.
literally jazz,
Well, Wired.
So
I mean, the album Wired
yeah,
doesn't have any lyrics on it. Seems to be very
yeah. What
jazzy.
was it? What was it? Blow by Blow, and there's a few of those
Lead
albums back then
Boots.
that. Yeah, I don't know that
Songs.
one, but
Yeah, yeah,
anyway, look, the point is that he actually was doing jazz,
yeah, yeah,
and he's kind of sort of come around the other side too, because he realizes where people want to see that, they don't want to see the jazz stuff, really. They want to see the rock and roll stuff.
yeah.
Otherwise he wouldn't have Johnny Depp playing guitar on there.
Right,
You know what I mean?
Johnny Depp. All right. Well, as we move towards closing, I like to close on something positive, but I wanted to look a little bit ahead to like I'm sure you follow pop music to some extent. Do you still a little
Kind
bit?
of.
Not so much.
Well, a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, I'm wondering what you think of it. Do you think pop music has gone down the toilet? Do you think it's just as good as it ever was? Do you think maybe, like, I'm wondering what your thoughts are about how it is now and the future of it?
Okay, well, I'll put it to you this way. I think there is and there always has been good music coming out. It's just finding it is difficult.
Right. Yeah.
No, but that being said, like, I come across stuff all the time that I love, like this band Bloodywood. You know these guys?
No.
They're
Check it out.
well, look them up. They're an Indian heavy metal band. Bloodywood, they're called, and it's absolutely fantastic. It's fucking great. It really is something. And I saw this, I was like, I sent it to everyone I could think of. Amazing. So I really like that. And what have I seen recently? Did some other thing came up? Shit. The Avett Brothers. Have you ever heard of them?
No. Yeah.
Right. There's a song called "No Hard Feelings." You should write these down and
yeah. No, actually, I am.
Yeah. The Avett Brothers. It's like Avett Brothers, and the video. Watch the video. No Hard Feelings.
And the other actually, was Mega Indian.
No, Bloodywood.
Bloodywood. Funny name.
Oh, but you're gonna die when you see them. They're absolutely fantastic.
I'm just curious. Is this pop music, or is this stuff that you ferreted out that's not hugely popular?
Well, it's stuff that's come under my radar, and I'm like, holy shit, that's good. So those two, like that song by the Avett Brothers, is just absolutely killer. It's killer. I guess it's pop music. I don't know.
Well, the reason I ask is that Bootsauce, because like it's sort of, as I said, I wanted to do your life and work up to the end of the Bootsauce era. Bootsauce were more or less aiming at a pop, trying to break into the popular sphere. Is that a reasonable assessment, do you think? I mean, you wanted to sell lots of records in the US and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if we weren't say we didn't want to make it.
To do a pop, like you were trying to aim at what might sell in the pop world. So I'm wondering, is that a reasonable assessment, first of all? Do you think? Is that, well, I don't mean to insult your music, obviously.
I mean, we kind of always had the same sort of idea, which was dance music mixed with heavy metal kind of thing. That was sort of the basis for what I was thinking, at least. That's kind of where I was coming from. And we sort of, we did end up with some stuff like that. Like the last actual Bootsauce album, which was recorded with John Fryer in the UK. That one has got like some of our heaviest kind of rock guitar tunes.
Is that the one with the guy from Motorhead? Lemmy, didn't he play on one of your albums? Or
that's on the second. That's on Bull. No, this was this was the last album, and
so you were aiming at a hybrid between heavy metal and what was the other thing you just
and dance music
right?
Okay. Yeah, so we wanted people to be able to dance to it and have some fun,
right, and also rock out.
Really, rock,
right,
out. That was the whole point. It was that was what I was looking for.
Okay,
and I mean, I think we did well with it, and in fact, I think if more people had heard the songs, more people would have liked it for sure.
Yeah,
it's just the way things happen. And also with us, we were on the weird cusp because our first album actually came out on vinyl, on vinyl, right?
1980.
But then
yeah,
it was like 1990 or something, right. 89 or 90.
Actual records, like
revival. It came out on vinyl. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like you go to Phantasmagoria and buy the album.
That's how far back this is.
Yeah. That's it. Anyway, so we between then and when we sort of ended in 95, say, that was sort of when Napster came in. So we got lost in the transition,
right?
Between
interesting,
but between vinyl, CD, and Napster, right? So
Interesting.
when the Napster thing really took off, we would have been like the last band to be put up on Napster, maybe a couple of songs here and there. But like for instance, you couldn't get Bootsauce on Spotify until last year.
Wow.
Wow,
Interesting.
yeah.
What was that about? Was that just your former record company
That was
dropping the ball?
Universal. They didn't care. Yeah, just didn't care. They literally didn't care. And the thing is, I was poking the hornet's nest by putting Bootsauce songs in all my videos. I was going to see, okay, who's gonna sue me here? To
It's
find
your
out.
own music.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. To find out.
That's hilarious.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I didn't even know who owns the music. I still don't actually. It's Universal, but anyway.
Universal, yeah. Okay. So part of it, so there's almost a functional issue there with just the transition technologically, which
Yeah,
took
that's it.
place,
We
right?
got lost in the transition for sure.
Right.
I mean, yeah.
It seems like the Napster thing really was like a kind of a nuclear bomb to the whole music world in some senses, and then things have reconfigured now where YouTube and other things are now counted. Spotify, it's kind of like for younger artists coming up, there's a way through that now. That
Yeah. Well, that is true, but okay, it's a sort of again, sort of what I was saying earlier, that it's much easier to get an album out now. Anyone can put an album
absolutely.
out. Like literally, there are some albums that have come out that are just like whatever. I mean, those I can't remember who was it on the guys that put out 30 Seconds of Silence, right, so that they have their
really. I remember hearing about
so their fans could play it on Spotify on loop. Wow. Right, so they made thousands and thousands of euros out of this because Spotify count after 30 seconds.
Interesting.
Anyway, there's that, and the thing is, like, I just decided for myself, at least, that I don't care about who's doing what or anything. I'm going to do what I want to do, and I don't care if I make it or not. What do I care? I'm 60 years old. I don't care if my songs play on Spotify. You know what I mean? And because of that attitude, I've had 80,000 streams on Spotify.
Amazing, yeah. I was really impressed with the just on YouTube. A lot of that, you have a lot of downloads on YouTube. When I looked at the numbers, it's
and the thing is, I do it all from sitting here at my desk in my kitchen. Like, you can't see, but that way is the kitchen. Like, literally there, I can reach into the kitchen,
grab your coffee.
Yeah.
No,
so that's what I mean. It's so much easier for everyone to do anything now. So I'm happy that because it actually levels the playing field in a way. Because anyone can put an album out, and that's why someone like, say, Thundercat or something like that, can come out of nowhere
and just blow up.
Blow up. And Thundercat wouldn't have blown up, whatever,
in the 90s or
15 years ago.
It seems like when you were a young musician, the technique that all the young musicians tried to do was to get to a record company and sign a contract. That was the objective. The record company would deal with all the promotion and do all the work, and they had all the capital to press records and all that.
Yeah, but here's the thing: that was the only
way to do it. Yeah,
there was no other way of doing it. There was no other way of doing it. You couldn't do it yourself. Well, okay.
There's only so many cassette tapes you can make in your bedroom and try and sell privately at shows. And
that's
all that kind of stuff, right?
Exactly it. And so there's like my dad, for instance, had his own little label. So he'd put out an album and they'd sell 2,000 or 3,000 copies, but he was making all the money from it. So if he was selling for $15
every single record,
do the math.
So it's for the pressing and all that, but the rest,
that's it. So you make 150 grand off it. So hey, woohoo, excellent.
Whereas when you're with Polygram, they're getting what, 90% or whatever. Something.
Yeah, we sold 650,000 albums and maybe made $3 grand.
Right. That raises a question. Do you think those record companies were abusive? Like, because this is a common charge.
I think that we got abused for sure. I mean, Look, I'm not sure who to point fingers at, but we definitely lost money, and we
Yeah,
were definitely
yeah,
ripped off,
yeah,
and I think in the industry, famously so. You know,
yeah,
but the thing about it is, I don't care.
yeah.
You know what?
Well, you had
What do I
fun and
care?
you
You know,
made those records and you did those
that's it. You
tours
know,
and right.
look, I gotta say that if there's any lawyers out there, and you want to help us see where the money is, I will gladly split it
Still
with
your
you.
former record company? Is that yeah? Yeah,
No,
I mean
look, I don't want to sue anybody. I just
no.
want to get what's our fair share. You know, that's all.
Right.
That'd be fine. That'd be enough for me. I'm not trying to, whatever. You know,
Yeah. Well, it seems like
and
it
the
was
other,
it was it was a very tough business because the record companies, I think they also lost a lot of money on lesser known artists, and what they're trying to do is they're trying to get a Madonna or a Rolling Stones to make it all those kind of like smaller bands that they
yeah,
actually invest a lot in to
yeah,
get paid back,
but
right? That's the business model, right? And
yes,
then once you're
well,
Madonna or the Rolling Stones, then you make your own record company. But then those original records that went big you're still getting some revenues from that, right? It's
that's true, and it's also the reason why like Taylor Swift has redone all her albums.
right.
She redid all her
I
albums,
didn't know that.
like note for note, redone them, so that she
Interesting.
doesn't have to pay
Wow. Okay. So then she
those.
represses them and
Yeah,
reissues them
yeah,
on YouTube and all
they're
that.
redone, so they're the same albums with the
That's
same
wild.
songs, but
Wow.
redone, so that she owns the masters and everything else. And because her fans love her so much,
They go and
they
buy
won't buy
those.
the old ones.
Right.
They'll only buy
Right.
the new ones.
I'm
Yeah.
sort of confused about that legally. Couldn't the record company strangely say, well, that's plagiarism? It sounds weird because she's the artist, but
Well,
like if
yeah,
it's
I
note
think
for note and the picture's the same on the cover, everything's identical. Is that,
yeah,
I
I
don't know.
think
Of course, it would look
I'm not
terrible.
exactly sure about this, but
It would be a terrible
but
look for the record company to go after.
yeah,
You know what I
to
mean? It
do
would
that,
look bad.
but
Right?
also I don't know how to put.
How to
Um,
formulate that? Is
Let me
that a
just think about this.
legal thing?
But okay, for instance, have you ever gone on the streaming, on Spotify or somewhere, and so no, that song, I used to love that song. You go play it, and it's not the version you remember. It's because there's more than just Taylor Swift re-releasing the old
Oh,
stuff
okay.
again. Yeah,
Interesting. I've noticed that on the
yes,
radio because where I listen to a lot of pop music is, when I'm in my car, I've tuned in because I like that's my way of trying to stay in touch and.
yeah,
And I've noticed sometimes I hear a song that I know and I'm like, wow, it sounds a little bit different. I always think it's me. Am I
yeah.
hearing
No,
it
I
wrong or
think
something? Or
a,
I don't remember it.
a lot of times it's people that have re-recorded their old hits to get out of bad contracts. You
Wow,
know,
so interesting. So
yeah.
this might be a good closer. Is there a Bootsauce reunion in the works then? Could you guys get back together and do that? Might be
Well, okay, I'll put it to you this way. It was in the works.
really
It
okay.
was, yeah, but it's I doubt it'll happen now.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
too bad.
Yeah, we did talk about it and everyone was in and we were, you know, kind of ready to start thinking about finding a new manager and whatever else to do. And we were going to release a single and, try to reboot something that way. But I can't see it happening now.
Yeah,
Although,
it's too bad.
I'll also say that I, I wouldn't be surprised if we do another song
Right. Okay. And
sometime.
then release
And
a single or some
yeah,
sort of maybe a record,
yeah,
some recorded music.
yeah. Well, I
Right.
mean, like one song.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if that happens somewhere down the line. But it's again, we kind of lost. We weren't big enough to have the sort of
Some cachet.
the oldies woo rocking to the oldies guys
Right.
thing going
Right. Right.
so we kind of missed out on that, and we were going to do it. What was it, the 25th anniversary or 30th anniversary of the Brown album or some, we were That was no, actually, no. That's what it was. It was the 31st anniversary of the Brown Album.
Okay, that's funny.
Yeah.
That's actually totally in keeping with Bootsauce's
Yeah,
brand,
that's
right?
it. So we
Yeah.
had it all on the go. We all spoke and everything else,
Okay.
and we were at least in a place where we would have done it.
Okay, but it's not going to happen now.
I don't think it's going to happen now. And I mean, I don't even live in the same country, you know.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Spread out.
And also
in British Columbia and Alan here, and
yeah,
John's
he's in
Toronto.
BC and
yeah, so it's kind of. I mean, just
yeah,
logistically, it's hard, right? It's just
I mean, it was one thing when we were all in Canada. At least then we could sort of we would fly to Montreal and start from there, you know, or whatever.
Right.
But now it's yeah. But a song, I can see that happening because that way I could just, you know, transfer my side, and Al could put his stuff on, and Perry could do his thing, and Drew sing over it. That I could see happening. But that's
it's not going to happen.
That's probably where.
Okay. What about just as a closer would be, maybe you could talk about a little bit about maybe what we're going to talk about next time, your current projects, just like kind of a teaser, and then this album you were talking about. Maybe you could tell us a bit about that. Maybe that might be interesting.
Yeah, what I've been doing is trying to. Well, basically, I recorded everything that I'm doing just sitting here, and then I decided what songs are going to. You know, some of them have some vocals, some of them don't. Some of them are old songs that I just redid. And so those are those two albums that are out right now. And then there's a third album, which myself and Alan Bakulis did together, which was the Brain Smack album. And that thing is amazing, too. That's a really
that's still
cool
together,
record.
because I remember when you were doing Brain Smack here in Montreal.
Yeah, it's up on Spotify and everywhere. You can go listen to it now.
Okay.
Right. So then, so now what is left is I've got, I'd say I'm 75% through the next record of another 10 tunes, say. And I'll be having people like, I don't know if I can even say, but I have some famous.
Don't have to name names, but just some,
you know,
some big names might be on there, right?
Yeah, there'll be, you know, some relatively famous, you know, jazz guys on there playing as well, soloing over the stuff, and also a couple of songs. So it'll be sort of the same thing as the last couple of albums, but it's just, you know, getting better as I go along, you know. That's you know, that's basically it. And then when that one's done, I'll get ready on the next one.
Keep going, right? I mean, that's what it's all about. It's just making music, and like, I mean, just, you know, my father, he had his teeth. He was a horn player, so his teeth. He was a musician all his life. He loved playing right into his 70s. He would still go do shows, gigs, he was paying gigs and everything. And then his teeth, his teeth finally went in. For horn players, it's really important.
You need to have them.
Yeah, so. So he's actually trying to have his teeth redone. He's trying to get back into it now because he just loves doing it so much. He just loves.
Yeah, well, I mean,
horn,
there's no reason not to do it. Yeah. If you're still able, why not? I mean, I was like, speaking of Joe Rogan from earlier, I just watched his interview with Roger Waters. Roger Waters is 79 and he's out touring. And I don't know if you've seen any of the stuff from the new show. It's freaking amazing.
Wow.
Amazing.
Yeah.
You know, great.
We saw the Rolling Stones in 2015 in Quebec City, and it was just great. I mean, it was fantastic on the Plains of Abraham.
Well, actually, they were probably better then than when I saw them.
Well, it's funny because I saw them in 1989 in Toronto at the Sky Dome. And they were kind of like old, like they were known as the old dudes then, even though they were younger than I am now, right? You know, and then I saw them again, and they were just, so.
Yeah, and the thing is that half the people that saw them are dead now.
Yeah.
From then.
Right.
And they're still going.
Yeah, well, I mean, Charlie Watts is now gone. It makes you wonder how long the Stones are going to keep going.
They'll keep going until Keith is dead.
Keith is
or
really,
Keith or Mick.
Yeah, one of those two, right?
Yeah,
It's funny as a side note too, how like Daryl Jones was their bass player when I saw them, and now they have Steve Jordan. It's almost like
yeah.
they're becoming a black band as they
Well, they
they always
always were
were
that.
musically, right?
Yeah,
But then now
yeah.
they
Rhythm and
actually have,
blues band, man.
yeah,
Yeah, they're literally a rhythm and blues band.
yeah.
That's what they were.
Their goal was to
Right
be the
from the
best
beginning.
blues band in London. That was their
Yeah,
goal in
yeah.
1962 or whatever, right?
I
So
think they think they did okay.
maybe, All right. Well, listen, that's a kind of a positive note to end on. So I want to thank you again, Sonny. This has been really, really cool. And it's you are perhaps the best known person I've interviewed, which tells you something about my podcast, right? If you're the biggest
Hey,
star, right? Chris Berry
yeah.
being the other one, right? So
Look, I'm happy to do it. And
okay.
myself and Chris had dinner in Spain not so long ago, and we
Had some
we
fun.
had some stories to tell. Yeah.
He told me about that. I just because I had never met him until I went out with Christian Gravener.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, from the Mirror, and I'm pretty good friends with him now. He's been on the podcast a bunch of times. He's an interesting guy, and so he invited me out to this kind of thing that he does with all these big Montreal people like Robbie Dillon and all this. So I went out, and Chris was there, and Robbie Dillon used to work with Albert Nirenberg, and he's a writer for what's that? Vice, he wrote for Vice. Anyway, and Neil Cameron was in that group, and these kind of big Montreal names. And so I was very honored to be invited, and it was, supposed to wear like kind of a suit and tie, not a suit, but just, and Chris was there, and he told me, he said, yeah, Sonny, man, he said, I remember touring with Bootsauce. He told me about how he toured. He opened for you guys.
Well, there might be a story or two there.
All right. Well, listen, that's a perfect teaser. Maybe those can come up for the next one. So anyone listening to this, I'm sure there's going to be thousands of people, and they're on the edge of their seats, right? So for the next one, right?
Yeah. But yeah, absolutely, no problem. Do it anytime. But let's wait till after the next album's out, and then we'll do that. That'll be cool.
Yeah,
cool.
Thanks, Sonny.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to today's guest on the Mega Blast podcast. I've been your host, Jason McDonald. This podcast is brought to you by Arts and Opinion, an online journal, which is also available in the Permanent Archives of Canada. Visit us online at artsandopinion.com.